Chapter 347. The probability of a sprite evolving into a lesser sprite was very low. Out of 10 or 20 sprite worms, only 2 or 3 may evolve, and there was a high chance that the evolution would fail. As for whether the evolution probability had anything to do with transplanting the worm stock, List was not clear. There was no evidence that the two were related. When Ella was still a thornworm, its worm stalk was planted in Tulip Castle. After migrating to Flower Town, it began to evolve and succeeded. Although there was the help of the smoke mission, it at least showed that the worm stalk could still evolve and succeed after the migration. Perhaps, for sprite worms, the migrating sprite grass is like rubber worm triplets? List suddenly thought. The power of the triplets should be regarded as a kind of magic, which would not affect the evolution of the rubber worms. Otherwise, the smoke mission would dig out their ability, which would be a trap for List. This was not in line with the usual style of the smoke mission. The triplets will recover after resting for a while after using the power of the triplet. The sprite will also recover after resting for a while. Perhaps for the sprite worm, this is like a magician releasing magic, which will certainly consume a little strength, but can be exercised more? By constantly releasing the power of the triplets and constantly migrating the worm stock, the sprite worm's magic mastery? List felt that this guess was not very reliable. The power of the triplets could also be explained by exercise and strengthening. How could the migration of the worm stalk not be regarded as exercise? What kind of sprite worm would pull up its worm stalk? As a plant, shouldn't it be planted in the field and grow steadily? The root of the sprite worm is the worm stalk. Migrating the worm stalk should be regarded as hurting the foundation. The power of the triplets should not be. List could only judge this way. At least the triplets were in good condition. There was no negative effect of using the power of the triplets at all. List waved his hand. The smoke mission emerged. It was still the original mission. It was not completed because of the worm stalk migration. It is probably because the wheat field has not been completely repaired, so the mission is not complete. Let's wait for 2 days and see if this is the case. After solving the conflict with the wheat worm, List mainly stared at Elk Sun and Glanny. The two magicians showed no signs of turning in the soul storage jar. One was peacefully making potions and making witty remarks at the banquet, while the other was immersed in making the sea-calming divine pearl and was not even willing to take a bath. Their apprentices were also working obediently, and there was nothing unusual. There was no news about the jar from other channels either. This made List a little depressed. Watching the two sorcerers eating and drinking, he was not very happy. It seems that if I don't force them, they won't hand over the storage jar of souls. Just as he was thinking about how to force the two to hand over the soul storage jar. However, something unexpected happened the next day. The insect protection team came to report that the horn sounded at the seaside. This was the signal for communication between him and the siren He. He had told the insect protection team that was guarding the fragrant coconut tree worm stalk to report to him as soon as they heard the horn. Therefore, he knew that Achi was looking for him. If there was nothing important, Achi would not blow the horn. She liked to stay in her room and read and study magic. After arriving at the Sea View Villa, Achi said in a panic, "Brother, Achi picked up an unconscious human being on the sea, and I don't know what to do with her." Following the direction of Achi's finger, List saw a pale woman lying on the bed in the wooden house on the second floor. She looked like a dead person, and her wet clothes were obviously a magic cloak. This was the standard dress of a sorcerer. This unconscious woman was a sorcerer. Then, he saw a pot that looked like a teapot on the bedside table. Soul storage jar? List's inspiration burst in an instant. His previous guess was wrong. I'm afraid that Elk Sun and Glanny have nothing to do with the soul storage jar. The clue of destiny guidance appeared on the unconscious sorcerer in front of him. Achi, what's the matter with this teapot? It was hidden in her clothes. It was in the way, so Achi took it out and put it on the table. Achi was nervous. "Brother, is she dead?" He checked his breathing. It was very stable. "She's not dead yet." List touched his chin, thinking that the sorcerer should not be in a coma caused by drowning, because drowning people should not be breathing so normally. He then reached out and touched the position of the sorcerer's heart. The heartbeat was also steady. "It seems that she didn't drown, but simply fell into a coma. There are no doctors in the town, only a few old people who can decoct herbs. I'll ask them to come over, and Teacher Marcus should also know a little about how to save people." List said to Achi, "You go away first." "Okay." Achi returned to the shell and swam back to the sea. List asked the retainer knight to ask for help immediately, and he continued to stay by the sorcerer's side. Looking at the unconscious sorcerer, he was helpless. He didn't know how to save people. He only knew the theory of artificial respiration, and the key was that the other party didn't seem to need artificial respiration. After all, she was breathing. So he directly picked up the teapot on the cabinet and studied it. It should be a copper teapot, but it was obvious that it was not used to hold tea. There was no such thing as a teapot in the Grand Duchy of Sapphire, because only List had real tea. Other people just drank milk tea made from the fruit of the black tea tree in a cup, and did not need a teapot. It looks a bit like Aladdin's magic lamp in the Arabian Nights. Touching the copper teapot, List couldn't help but wipe the teapot. He was looking forward to the sudden emergence of a genie made of blue smoke, fulfilling his 3 wishes. However, it didn't. He shook the teapot. There was nothing in it, and there was no teapot lid. It was a hole, probably only the mouth of the teapot was the mouth of the pot. So, is it a soul storage pot? After casting magic eyes, there were no traces of magic power on it. It looked just like an ordinary tea set. A teapot carried by a sorcerer was definitely not an ordinary item. But List had no clue. He put down the teapot and carefully looked at the unconscious sorcerer. Her pale face made her look like a dead person. Her appearance was ordinary, and there were some freckles on her face. Her hair was brown, and she was about 1.65 meters tall. She was neither fat nor thin. There was no one around, so he didn't have to worry about anything. He directly searched the sorcerer's clothes with his hand, looking for anything else that could prove the other person's identity. In the end, he only felt a pendant on her neck. The pendant was pendant with a silver coin, not a silver coin that could be bought or sold, but a silver round metal coin. It was very light and felt a bit like mithril. The front was engraved with a triangular pattern with an eye in the middle. This was the symbol of a sorcerer, the Eye of Truth. Below the triangle of the Eye of Truth, there were several wavy curves, which probably represented water. On the back was a line of small serpentines. May the voyage of truth be accompanied by the sea of knowledge, Chrissy Truth. Chapter 348. So, is she called Chrissy Truth, or is the person who gave this silver coin called Chrissy Truth? List thought as he played with the silver coin. Starting with the word wish represented the wishes of a friend, indicating that the silver coin was given to her by someone else. Then, there were 2 explanations for Chrissy Truth. One was the unconscious wizard's real name, and the other was the name of her friend. However, when a friend gave their blessings and left their name, it was usually followed by a symbol. There was no symbol on the silver coin. This line of serpentines was written on the back of the silver coin in the form of 3 lines of serpentines. Therefore, there was no need for symbols, and there was no way to determine whose name it was. Of course, the above was just a momentary change in List's thoughts. It did not matter what the other party's name was. The silver coin could not solve any identity problems. For the time being, your name is Chrissy. List stuffed the pendant back into the other party's neck. However, he had no intention of putting the copper kettle back. According to the prevailing laws of the lords, items that drifted ashore at sea belonged to the local lord. Because the lord owned everything on the land, even the wizard Chrissy, she could be classified as an enemy trespassing on the territory, and the Lord had the right to arrest her. However, the Flower Town, like most of the Lord's territories, was open to the public. As long as one did not come with malice, they would not be casually questioned. This copper kettle could be regarded as a reward for saving a life. He was a reasonable lord who abided by the rules. Sir, Marcus had already arrived, along with several elderly people. Liszt pointed to the bed. There is an unconscious wizard floating by the sea. Teacher Marcus, see if you can wake her up. The rest of you, see if there are any herbal prescriptions that can treat an unconscious person. Marcus observed for a while and shook his head. Sir, I can't see what's wrong with her. She does not look like a drowning person. Several elderly people could not see the problem either. They could only use some simple herbs to treat common minor illnesses. In this world full of magic power, a knight with chi could constantly recuperate and improve their physique. Therefore, it was very difficult for them to fall sick. Therefore, medicine was very underdeveloped. Once the commoners fell seriously ill, they were basically waiting for death. There was no possibility of treatment. Liszt had the idea of developing medicine, but he had no idea where to start. For the commoners, instead of spending the exorbitant medical fees to treat illnesses, it was more practical to cultivate Do Chi. After all, as long as one ate well and practiced diligently, they would be able to cultivate battle Chi. However, there was no such high probability of curing an illness. An old man said with a trembling voice, My lord, this mage lady may be too weak. She will wake up naturally when her body recovers. It's possible. Liszt nodded and said to the manservant, Thomas, give each of the elderly a copper coin as compensation for their delay in work. It was only right for a few people who were about to be buried to make a trip here and give them some compensation. Yes, master. Ah, thank you, my lord. The elderly people happily took the copper coins and left. Liszt was still discussing with Marcus. There is a mage floating on the beach. Teacher Marcus, what do you think? Mages are very weak. Compared to us knights, they are no different from ordinary commoners. Therefore, I don't think she could have been soaked in the sea for too long. Furthermore, there is no sign of her drowning. I suspect that she may be a mage from Coral Island, or a mage brought by a passing ship. Liszt said, Although I don't know how many mages there are on Coral Island, but from the exposed mages, none of them match her physical characteristics. She looks relatively young, probably no more than 25 years old. It is impossible for there to be such a young mage on the island. Maybe she is a magic apprentice? Magic apprentice. Liszt thought for a moment. There is also this possibility. So why did she fall into the sea, and how did she float here smoothly? According to Achi, she was picked up on the sea. At that time, she was floating on the sea with her clothes. This was somewhat against the laws of physics. The aquamarine sea was not the Dead Sea, it could not float people. I can't explain it, but I think she must be watched more closely. Mages are dangerous people, Marcus said seriously. He didn't like mages. He never had a good face for Elksun and Glanny. Not to mention a mage of unknown origin. After thinking for a moment, Liszt decided to move her to a residential area, find a house, arrange for someone to take care of her, and let the patrols keep a close watch on her. Once she wakes up, they should inform him immediately. Then he called Achi with a horn. I have taken the unconscious mage to the town to take care of her. Achi, human mages are dangerous. They have an impulsive curiosity about unknown creatures. You'd better not come into contact with mages before you reach adulthood. Well, Achi understands. The little siren was a little depressed. It's a pity that Achi's feet can't grow out. I can't live with my brother and live like a human. There will be such a day. Liszt rubbed her hair. Suddenly, he had a burst of inspiration. He let Achi sit on a chair, then took out a roll of tape measure and measured the length of Achi's leg. According to your description, when you were born, there was seawater below your knees. 41 years later, there is only seawater below your ankles. If we assume that your growth rate remains stable, we can measure how many years it will take for you to reach adulthood by the proportion of your leg. Ah, is that okay, brother? Achi suddenly had little stars in her eyes. She didn't know if she was happy because she was going to know when she would reach adulthood or because of List's profound knowledge. List smiled and lifted Achi's calf. He put one end of the tape measure on her knee and stretched it to her ankle. It was measured to be 41 centimeters. According to the general proportion of the human body, I estimate that the length of your feet is about 12 centimeters, so we can get a binary linear equation. Well, it doesn't have to be so complicated. Basically, you will grow 1 centimeter a year. 41 centimeters. 41 centimeters. The remaining length of her feet was about 12 centimeters, which meant that Achi still had 12 years before she reached adulthood. Achi's little face immediately fell. Brother, is it 12 years before I reach adulthood? List was also depressed. Basically, if nothing goes wrong and the inference is correct, the speed of your long feet will not exceed the speed of your long leg. So, it will indeed take 12 years for you to reach adulthood. Of course, if your feet are small, maybe 10 years or less. Achi was at most 1.55 meters tall, and her feet wouldn't be very big. Maybe they would be 3-inch golden lotuses. Chapter 349. This chapter is a free chapter. Since many readers were already confused about the characters, I listed the main characters so that everyone could compare them. Tulip family member Lady Penelope. The protagonist's grandmother lives alone in a small castle. Greg Tiles. The protagonist's grandfather, the Viscount of Tahiti. He has never appeared before, and has only been heard of by Madame Penelope. Lee William Tulip. The protagonist's father, a sky knight at the level of a sword saint, Earl of Coral Island. Melissa Longtaro. The protagonist's mother has passed away. Madame Marie. The protagonist's stepmother, the second Countess. Levis the Tulip. The protagonist's brother, elite Earth Knight, Viscount for life. Elvira Tulip. The protagonist's sister, Earth Knight, Baron of Falcon Town. List Tulip, protagonist. Lytton Tulip. The protagonist's half-brother, a trainee knight. Taro family member, Merlin Longtaro. The protagonist's maternal grandfather, a perfected sky knight, Marquis of Red Crab Island, former captain of the court fleet. Mesiro Longtaro. The protagonist's uncle, a normal-level sky knight. Meepaul Longtaro. Cousin of the protagonist, Mesiro's only son, elite Earth Knight, pursues the Grand Duke's daughter. Melinda Longtaro. Aunt of the main character, sister of Messier and older sister of Melissa. Roland Pinecone. Uncle of the protagonist, Viscount of Longtail City, elite Earth Knight. Russell Pinecone. The cousin of the protagonist. His wife is Jackie Broccoli. They have a 1-year-old daughter, Rosie Pinecone. Raleigh Pinecone. The cousin of the protagonist. The servants in Flower Town's castle, Carter Claypot. Butler, over 50 years old, unmarried, wished to spend the rest of his life with the Tulip family. Mawson Paddyfield. Housekeeper, unmarried, good at making milk tea. Abby Ladle, chef. Under List's guidance, she has become a famous chef. Thomas Scissors, valet. Tom Pigsty, second manservant. Lily Bathtub, maid. She has a good figure and looks. She's the face of a castle maid. Irene Fourfingers. Kitchen maid, wants to stay in the kitchen forever. One-Eyed Barton. Coachman, a refugee from Little Kerchief Island. Officials of the Flower Town's administrative office, Gort Mast. Flower Town's consultant, List's tutor, and a destitute Lord Knight. He has a lover, Freya, and an illegitimate son, Donald Mast. Isaiah Moss, administrative officer. Blair Steele, financial officer. Carl Hammerstein, originally List's retainer knight, later served as defense officer, and has now been transferred to the port town. Rome wine barrel. Originally Liszt's retainer knight, later served as insect officer, and has now taken over Karl's defense officer. Zambrata, an aristocrat deprived of his title, has traveled to the Steel Ridge Kingdom and its vassal states, and is now serving as a diplomat. Costo, captain of the Flower, concurrently serving as the town's maritime officer, a refugee from Little Kerchief Island. Nemo, Liszt's friend, the second son of a minor aristocrat, has taken over Rome's insect officer. Members of the Night Squad: Marcus Wheel, captain of the Night Squad, Liszt's tutor, a wind-attributed elite Earth Knight, and a sharpshooter. Charles Trapp, a wandering Lord Knight, a thunder-attributed elite Earth Knight. Rondo Kettle, Captain Layden's illegitimate son, an Earth-attributed Earth Knight. Russell Steele, born under a free name, a fire-attributed Earth Knight. Rick Footprint, Liszt's classmate, the second son of a minor aristocrat, 19 years old, an Earth-attributed Earth Knight. Griffin Haystack, born as an orphan, stutters a little, an Earth-attributed Earth Knight. Simon Plate, Norman Twine, Leslie Dead Leaves, Eric Drywood, Daniel David Yellowteeth. The 6 new Earth Knights have not yet established a follower relationship. Philip Wool, Xavier Cow Dung, Liszt's retainer knight. Others: Roderick Golden Wheatgrass, Marquis of Golden Island, about to become Levis's father-in-law. Roger Golden Wheatgrass, Roderick's son. Rolia Golden Wheatgrass, Roderick's daughter, about to become Levis's wife. Ranesa Golden Wheatgrass, Roderick's youngest daughter. Meeting Levis was like meeting a rainbow. Durante Hyacinth, Count of Red Crab Island. Dunico Hyacinth, Durante's daughter, loved the piano and had a good time with Liszt. Athena Salmon, daughter of a Viscount of Red Crab Island. She confessed her love to Liszt, and should be married now. Wallace Pineapple Green, Marquis of Deep Throat Island, has not yet appeared, but has been mentioned several times. Jonas Gravel, Viscount of Coral Island, Viscount of Gravel City, son is Brandon Gravel. Patrick Clover, Viscount of Coral Island, Viscount of Beer Island, son is Aubrey Clover, a big fat man. Captain Mickey, Baron, a captain of Coral Island's Orders of Chivalry, equivalent to a deputy head. Captain Leyden, Leyden Kettle, father of Londo Kettle, a captain of Coral Island's Orders of Chivalry. Frank, Levis's tutor. He has a daughter named Shirley, who is Liszt's childhood sweetheart. Elksun Truth, wizard making potions for Liszt. Glanny Truth, wizard making calm beads for Liszt. Sapphire family member Anderson Sapphire, first Grand Duke, Dragon Knight, mount a sapphire dragon. Anflor Sapphire, second Grand Duke. Andit Sapphire, third Grand Duke. Annette Sapphire, ghost ship's Curtis Truth's undying lover. Because he did not have long to live, he chose to be a dragon domain lord. Finally, he was stopped and his soul was exiled forever. Inferred to be the third Grand Duke's elder brother. Anchit Sapphire, fourth Grand Duke. Andrew Sapphire, fifth Grand Duke. Incumbent Sapphire Duke. Perfection level Sky Knight, unable to ride a dragon. Angela Sapphire, fifth Grand Duke's youngest daughter. Meopal has been pursuing her. Her identity has basically been confirmed. She is a social butterfly. Cohen Magic Goat, from the distant Magic Goat family, once a Grand Duchy's marquis, but was killed because of a palace coup involving Annette. Curtis Truth, Marquis Cohen's niece, a great wizard. In order to pursue Annette's soul, she voluntarily became a lich. In the end, she died at the hands of the protagonist. Chapter 350. A chi, maybe for a siren, 10 years is just a blink of an eye, Liszt said with some emotion. He not only calculated when a chi would reach adulthood, but also how long a chi's life would be. 41 plus 12 was equal to 53. According to the human age of 16 and the life expectancy of 100 years, a siren's life expectancy was about 330 years. A big elf's life expectancy was 200 years, a dragon elf's life expectancy was 500 years, and a siren was in between. 330 years, with 25 years as a generation, humans may have given birth to more than a dozen generations. If Liszt did not become the lord of the dragon domain, perhaps it would be his grandson's 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 grandson who would attend Achi's funeral. Thinking about it this way, it was quite funny. Humans only live for 100 years, will Achi live for 330 years? Achi was a little confused. But, brother, Achi doesn't want to live that long. Well, Achi just wants to live as long as brother. Liszt picked up her little hand, kissed it, and said gently, "This is just a calculation. Maybe you can live longer, maybe you can't live for 300 years. Let the future decide what will happen in the future. Sooner or later, I will ride a dragon and become a dragon knight. It's also good to become the lord of the dragon domain, that way I can live for 400 or 500 years." Achi smiled and let Liszt hold her little hand. "Well, brother can become the lord of the dragon domain, so that Achi and brother can live for hundreds of years. When I become a dragon knight and the lord of the dragon domain, I will take you to explore the world. I don't want to be a grand duke or a king. A dragon could suppress a country, so a dragon knight could choose to create a country, but not all dragon knight liked to create a country. Many dragon knight only enjoyed the title of grand duke, and they would still occasionally fight for the kingdom. It was normal for a kingdom to have several dragon knight. Especially the dragon knight provided by the kingdom, it was necessary to serve the kingdom. Liszt could not decide what kind of dragon he would ride in the future, but at least it was not so attractive to be the king of a country. If he had several dragons, he could give one or two to his descendants and let them enjoy being king. When they left the seascape villa, Liszt felt his blood boiling in his heart. No matter what, I am destined to ride a dragon and become the lord of Dragon City, for the sake of longevity. In the past, he did not envy longevity. He felt that 100 years was enough for him to live a wonderful life. Now, he was looking forward to immortality because this world was too big. There were too many places worth exploring and beautiful things worth cherishing. The unconscious magician did not wake up for a long time. To prevent her from starving to death in her coma, Liszt ordered people to feed her a little normal milk every day, prolonging her life. He himself continued to study the copper teapot. Basically, it can be judged that this is the soul storage tank, because there is no information about the soul storage tank in any other channel. He even asked Elksun and Glanny, who knew little about the soul and knew nothing about the soul storage tank. "So, how does this soul storage jar work?" I poured my battle chi into it, but there was no reaction at all. According to the explanation of the smoke mission, this was a magic equipment. If it was a magic equipment, it would be stimulated by magic and activated, but it did not react at all. Although the spout of the teapot was a hole that could be filled with water, even if it was filled with boiling water, there was still no reaction. It was like a real teapot without a lid. However, the spout of the teapot is too thin to make tea. As a last resort, Liszt took the copper teapot and asked Elksun to check if he could get a hint. After rubbing it for a while, Elksun shook his head. "Lord Baron, I can see that this teapot has traces of magic carving, and there must be some kind of magic engraved inside it. But unfortunately, I don't know how this magic works, and I can't activate it. Let Glanny judge." Glanny explained in a similar way, "It was definitely made by a great magician. The technique is exquisite, especially the engraving of the magic runes, which I have never seen before. Baron Liszt, since you don't know what it is for, why don't you give it to me to study? I am very interested in it." "Sorry, it's still useful to me for the time being." How could he give it to an outsider? Liszt returned to the castle with the copper teapot. Liszt was a little uncertain. Neither Elksun nor Glanny can explain this soul storage jar. There is probably no magician on Coral Island who can explain it. If my Lisai is not dead, she can probably explain one or two things. She has studied souls. Speaking of souls, I seem to have a 36D specter. A specter is also a form of soul. The floating bottle can hold specters, and this soul storage jar should obviously be able to hold more souls. Give it a try? Then give it a try. After deciding, Liszt no longer hesitated. He found a cool place, took out a floating bottle made of unknown metal, and smeared a little of Phil the old leathersmith's blood on it. In the field of vision of the magic eyes, countless lines formed by magic power emerged on the floating bottle and formed a picture, depicting a bizarre world. The next moment, the bottle opened. A dim light shot out and the 36D specter floated above the bottle. There was a moment of hesitation. Then, the specter seemed to wake up, waving its hands with long nails, and immediately rushed towards Liszt. However, Liszt just raised the red blood sword, which was filled with fire-attributed chi, and the specter was scared motionless. Quite obedient. Marcus was able to scare the specter, so Liszt was naturally not afraid. He raised the copper teapot and pointed the spout at the specter. However, the specter was silly and did not respond. Useless. Liszt shook the copper teapot vigorously, but still did not attract the specter. This was different from what he had imagined. He simply aimed the copper teapot directly at the specter's body and shoved it in. This was a broken pot method. Liszt didn't expect it to really cause a change. After touching the specter's illusory body, the copper teapot burst into a bright light and instantly engulfed the 36D specter. The next moment, it returned to normal. But Liszt knew that the specter's soul had been contained because the copper teapot had become a little heavier. After shaking it, it felt like there was a little more water inside, just a little bit. But this slight change, for the elite Earth Knights, was still clear to see. He gently tilted the spout of the teapot and poured out. No water flowed out, only bursts of smoke. The smoke rose and turned into the appearance of a young girl, no longer the image of the 36D specter, but a girl with a clear face. Although the girl's eyes were smoke, they were very vivid and lifelike. First, she looked around in confusion. Chapter 351. The 36D had become a young girl, but she still had a 36D bust. When she was still a 3D ghost, her face was barely visible. Now it was very clear. There was a vague shadow of Curtis Truth. She was very beautiful, but the style was the complete opposite. Curtis always had the gloom of a lich, surrounded by green light, which made people feel very uncomfortable. The misty girl in front of him, on the other hand, was white and looked somewhat holy. You don't remember who you are? Liszt looked at the soul storage jar in his hand, feeling very incredulous. With just a suction and release, the originally ferocious and terrifying ghost impressively became holy light. It seemed that this soul storage jar was definitely a magic equipment of the divine artifact level. And it really did look a little like Aladdin's magic lamp. At least the girl's body was like a cloud of smoke coming out of the spout of a teapot. The upper body was human and the lower body was still smoke. The girl lowered her eyelids and seemed to be thinking. Liszt did not disturb her. In fact, he had some speculations. The 36D ghost originated from the keel fixation, from a shipwreck of the magic goat family. There were 5 boxes of treasures in the shipwreck. 2 boxes were magic books, 1 box of crystals, 1 box of jade, and 1 box of mithril. To be able to carry such goods, it showed that this shipwreck was not ordinary. It should be an important ship of the magic goat family. Then, being sealed in the keel fixation of such a ship, it was not difficult to guess the identity of the girl. She should be related to the magic goat family. In addition, the more he looked at her, the more similar she looked to Curtis, which further supported Liszt's speculation. She might be a member of the magic goat family, or even had her soul stripped by Curtis and sealed in the keel fixation. The magic goat family, A family that disappeared in the long river of time, but again and again pestered Liszt. He did not know whether to feel honored or unlucky. He also thought that Milesi Truth, who was killed by Paris, seemed to be related to the magic goat family. Her research notes had the logo of a goat on them. And Chris, the unconscious mage, did not know if she was also related to the magic goat family. At least the soul storage jar seemed to be the work of an evil mage like Curtis. He pondered for a moment. The girl raised her head absent-mindedly and looked at Liszt again. I can't remember. I don't think I'm a human anymore. I look like a soul now? Yes, you should be in a soul state right now, but you're different from the souls I've seen before. They all exist in the form of light. You, on the other hand, are somewhat similar to smoke. In addition, you were previously a ghost that was sealed in the dragon-fixing bone. Liszt shook the soul storage jar in his hand. It shook along with the smoke coming out of the teapot. This affected the young girl's entire body, causing her to tremble like water ripples. However, the young girl did not feel any discomfort. She just stared blankly at the soul storage jar and the smoke connecting to her body. He muttered to himself, Keel, Dragon Beast Sailboat, Truth, Magic Goat, who am I? Who am I? Dragon Beast Sailboat? Liszt's ears twitched as he heard a new term. He guessed that this was the name of the sailboat that used the keel fixing technique, the unique technology of the Magic Goat family, Dragon Beast Sailboat. Hearing her say Magic Goat, it was obvious that she was indeed a member of the Magic Goat family. Liszt interrupted her troubled thoughts. I think I can give you a hint. The Dragon Beast sailboat should be a sailboat that is unique to the Magic Goat family. As for you, maybe you are a member of the Magic Goat family. I am a member of the Magic Goat family? The young girl seemed to have her memory triggered, but she could not remember. Do you know more? Liszt raised his eyebrows. Do you know Curtis Truth? Curtis! The young girl's face suddenly changed, her expression was full of panic, and her body made of smoke and light began to flicker. It's her. It's her. Curtis Truth, that terrible woman. She killed me. She massacred the goat gathering, and all those who did not obey her orders were killed by her. Then, she suddenly held her head and wailed in pain. Don't kill me. I am Virginia, I am your sister. Don't kill me, Curtis. He did not know if it was too painful, or if the time was up. She turned back into a cloud of smoke, and returned to the soul storage tank. When Liszt shook it, he could feel the liquid inside, but he could not pour it out. He had to put the soul storage tank into the gem space. A living thing would soon die in the gem space, but souls were probably different. The floating bottle had been in it for a long time, and 36D ghosts were still very normal. The soul storage tank should have a similar function. Back in the castle, he took out a thick piece of bast paper and wrote the words Dragon Sailboat, Virginia Truth, and Goat Gathering in serpentine. The Goat Gathering is probably an organization of a group of wizards. Virginia may be Curtis' sister. Maybe she has mastered the dragon bone fixing technique. Liszt no longer cared about the grudges of the past. It was nothing more than a melodramatic story of a twisted, crazy woman for love who harmed her family. Whether it was righteous or evil, it had nothing to do with him. He was more concerned about the dragon bone fixing technique. In the vast sea, the chances of encountering sea monsters were indeed not high, but in case of encountering one, the dragon bone fixing would release dragon might, which would definitely increase his chances of survival. Virginia Truth hid in the soul storage tank and could not pour it out. Chris Truth lay in bed and could not wake up. In a flash, it was late May, and the weather officially turned into a scorching summer. Good news came one after another. First, the sprite worms bred by the 4 snake blood fruit potted plants fell to the ground, bit Liszt's fingers, and became his contracted sprite worms. The 4 snake blood fruit worms, all pale white with a red stripe on their bodies, were very beautiful. The snake blood fruit worms were transported by List to Black Horse Island and planted in a newly reclaimed wasteland on Black Horse Island. The snake blood fruit would attract snakes, and there were no poisonous snakes on Black Horse Island, so there was no need to worry about attracting poisonous snakes. The only thing to be careful was not to attract sea snakes and sea monsters. After the snake blood fruit worm, the apple sprite also landed smoothly. The apple tree, which had become a worm stalk, became stronger and more vigorous. This year, it produced a bunch of small green apples. Unfortunately, they will not continue to grow, whether it is spring, summer, autumn, or winter, it will remain in this state. Many small aristocrats especially like to go to the forest in winter to find sprite worms. If they are lucky, they can find green worm stalks from a large area of dead trees. Of course, the probability is very low, and the distribution of wild sprite worms is very thin. During the winter of Black Horse Island, Marcus and others have searched several laps and have not found any worm stalk. The pale green apple sprite worm, lying in the palm of List's hand, looked fat, like a piece of green nephrite. I do not intend to transplant this apple tree worm stalk, so, Mr. Carter, please contact Isaiah, the administrative officer, and transform the castle into an apple orchard. Chapter 352. Shortly after the apple sprite worm was born, List's 18th sprite worm was also about to arrive. Under the careful care of the serfs, the yellowing of the wheat field's leaves was finally restored to an exuberant green. One of the tall wheat seedlings showed an unusual growth. It had already condensed magic power and turned into a worm stalk. The smoke mission also changed just in time. Mission completed. Reward: 1 wheat sprite worm. List was very happy with the birth of the wheat worm. This was because wheat was one of the most important crop. The little wheat worm that could increase the yield of wheat was worth more than 4,000 gold coins in the market. Before the New Year's Day, it took me almost half a year to harvest 5 sprite worms. The peanut sprite worm, the black nightshade sprite worm, the tomato sprite worm, the fragrant coconut sprite worm, and the corngrass sprite worm. After the New Year's Day, before half a year had passed, I had already harvested 9 sprite worms. The wheat sprite worm, the apple sprite worm, the rubber sprite worm, and the snake blood fruit sprite worm. Even though there weren't a lot of them, there were definitely a lot of them, especially the rubber worms and snake blood fruit worms, which were sent in group. Just a few days ago, the rubber worm used the power of the 3 elements for the second time to restore the rubber trees near the rubber plantation to their best state, greatly increasing the speed and quantity of rubber harvesting. Port Town has used rubber water to build houses and roads. This would be the first modern town under List's rule. The smoke in front of him slowly drifted, forming new serpentines. Mission: perhaps you didn't discover the meaning of the silver coin pendant in your haste. It is by no means an ordinary silver coin. It has been blessed by magic power, and may be able to awaken a wizard in a coma. Reward: a magician in distress. Zhang Xian's eyes lit up. List did not hesitate and went straight to the town to visit the unconscious magician. Guard the door. Don't disturb me while I treat the magician. After dismissing the servant and the retainer knight, he walked straight to the bedside and looked at Chrissy, who was carefully taken care of by several women. When they first fished her up, her face was pale and bloodless, like a dead person. However, her face was now very rosy, but her appearance was still ordinary. Out of 10 points, List could only give her a passing 6 points. The silver coin pendant around her neck was still there. When he was fiddling with it, he didn't notice anything unusual about the silver coin. At most, the material was special, and it was probably made of the lightest magic metal, mithril. Now that the smoke mission had reminded him, he cast magic eyes, carefully observed, and tried to inject chi. The moment he infused the silver coin with his chi, a few magic patterns appeared on it. Then, there was the sound of a mage chanting. It sounded like heavenly music, but the content of the singing could not be understood. There were only a few syllables repeated. Is it Moon Whisper? Liszt wanted to capture the melody. According to the records of several magic books, the magicians of the ancient Moon Empire could cast blessing spells. Is this melody a blessing spell? The Moon Empire was the source of all civilizations in every country. Magicians also found it fun to dig up the magic of the Moon Empire. They liked to research the Moon language and claimed that the languages of all countries were inherited from the Moon language. Many words were simply variations of the Moon language. Now, Moon Whisper's blessing sounded. It sounded really nice. Liszt felt a little intoxicated, but he still used magic eyes to observe the silver coin. The magic lines on the silver coin were like strings of a musical instrument. Every time it vibrated, a Moon Whisper tone would ring out. Gradually, the magic in the air seemed to be affected by the blessing spell and began to gather like water waves. Eventually, the gathered magic began to wash the unconscious mage. After a long while, the blessing spell dissipated, and the luster of the silver coin gradually dimmed. Liszt could not activate a new blessing spell even if he injected qi. At this time, the mage, who had been unconscious for more than a week, suddenly coughed softly. Cough, cough. She hadn't woken up yet, but her eyelids were twitching. Liszt tidied up his frac-abier, showed a proper aristocratic smile, and thought to himself, although the smoke mission used the mage who was originally in my hands as a mission reward, it was a bit sneaky. But it's still good to wake up Chrissy as soon as possible. There was no end to the dim world. She felt her body was full of fatigue, and her head seemed to have been hit by a sledgehammer. She was dizzy, unable to concentrate, weak, uncomfortable, sleepy, and dizzy. She wanted to escape, but there was nowhere to run. She could only keep wandering in the darkness, more tired and helpless each time. At this moment, an ethereal voice suddenly sounded in her ear. The voice was like a clear spring pouring over her body, instantly drenching her whole body, from top to bottom. Her drowsy consciousness also began to become clear. The dim world suddenly lit up with a light, marking the exit of the road. She ran hard, running toward the light at the exit, using all her strength. She no longer wanted to sink in the endless darkness. Finally, she ran to the exit, where the light was so bright that she couldn't help but close her eyes. But she still rushed over without hesitation. A new world unfolded in front of her. It was a simple wooden house. There were no superfluous decorations, but there was a handsome man with eyes like blue gems, looking at her with the most noble smile on his face. Their eyes met, as if their hearts were seen through by each other. Ah! She let out a sound, but her throat was extremely hoarse. You're awake? The handsome man asked in a slightly magnetic voice. Such an elegant temperament, such a gentle voice, and a gaze that could see through one's soul. It was like a dream, making her feel as if she had escaped from a nightmare and entered a wet dream. Her voice was still very hoarse, and she couldn't express a complete meaning. In fact, she was still in a daze and hadn't completely woken up. I'm glad that you're awake. Maybe you don't know that you've been unconscious for nearly a week after we rescued you from the sea. The handsome man smiled, as if the sun had swept away the haze. You don't look like you've completely recovered. I'll have someone take care of you, and we'll talk when you're awake. Then, he turned and left. Soon, a few women dressed like commoners came in. They roughly helped her up, and someone wiped her face with a towel. As they wiped, they asked, Miss Mage, do you feel better? Someone also braided her hair, using enough strength to pull her hair out. She also said, when you were rescued by the great and benevolent Sir Lord, your hair was already loose. I don't know how you tie your hair, so I can only comb a ponytail for now. Chapter 353. Chrissy Truth sobered up. Although she was still very weak, but with the help of the peasant woman, she had successfully sat on a stool and could answer Liszt's questions. So, is Chrissy Truth your name? Yes, Sir Baron. Chrissy nodded and then said in a hoarse voice, "Thank you for rescuing me from the sea. Chrissy does not know how to repay your kindness." List said casually, "How about working for the flower town?" Chrissy didn't react. According to her usual routine, she should at least say a few polite words before talking about repayment. Of course, my life was saved by Sir Baron. Chrissy is very willing to work for you. But I am a little worried that I will implicate you, Sir Baron. The solicitation seemed to be very successful. List asked, "Implicate me?" Chrissy nodded. "Aren't you curious as to why I ended up in the sea?" "I am quite curious. You can tell me, I want to know." Since you are my savior, I should not hide anything from you. This matter is very serious and involves a lot of people. I hope that you will keep it to yourself, Lord Baron. It's best not to let a third person know." "Is that so? Tell me, I will weigh the pros and cons." Chrissy took a deep breath. Her eyes were at a loss for a moment, and then she said slowly, "I thought I was going to die. I was frozen in ice magic and drifted along the sea. Coral Island, Flower Town, and fortunately, I met Sir Baron, who gave me a second life." She paused. She seemed to be sorting out her thoughts. After a moment, she said, "Coral Island is in the Grand Duchy of Sapphire. It is remote. Perhaps by the time the news reaches here, it will already be too late." "What news?" List couldn't help but urge. Chrissy carefully looked at the room. After making sure that no one was eavesdropping, she leaned forward and said in a low but serious voice, "Marquis Bull is going to assassinate the Grand Duke's dragon." "What?" List exclaimed, then lowered his voice. "Chris, are you kidding me?" "I didn't, Lord Baron. I also hope that this is false news, but I personally participated in this matter, and this is all true." Crazy's expression became somewhat numb. The magicians of the Goat Gathering always thought that they were only researching about dragons. Only on the final day did they realize that Marquis Bull was using us to assassinate the Grand Duke's dragon. Goat Gathering, a gathering of mages, mainly to do some research on Iron Hoof Island. We're secretly receiving funding from Marquis Bull. List tried not to speculate too much and just continued to ask, "You mean, the goat gathering that the Magic Goat family organized? Lord Baron, you also know about the Goat Congregation? I thought it was a secret magician organization." "Yes, the Goat Congregation originated from the Magic Goat family more than 100 years ago. At that time, many magicians were attached to the Magic Goat family. After a disaster, the Goat Congregation was forced to move. They moved to Iron Hoof Island. They hid for decades, until one day, the leader of the Goat Gathering, a magician, established contact with the previous Marquis Bull. From then on, the magicians could stay on Iron Hoof Island with peace of mind, continue to do all kinds of research, and gradually grow stronger. Chris joined the Goat Congregation 14 years ago. At that time, she was only 10 years old and was still a magic apprentice. Until the year she was 17, she was promoted to a magician. She just turned 24 this year. I've always thought that the Goat Congregation was just an ordinary magician organization. They don't usually gather together, but occasionally they would exchange magic. The great magicians in the congregation would also assign some research topics for us young magicians. I was assigned a topic about whether souls can be stored. My soul storage tank. Did it fall into the sea? Only then did she remember that she still had a soul storage tank magic equipment. List was not embarrassed at all. "Is it that copper kettle? It might have been taken away by my servant and stored in the castle's warehouse. Do you need it? It's a very magical magic equipment. It's the collection of the great magician Rashid Truth. After he assigned me a topic, he gave me the soul storage tank to study. But I hated him for betraying the Goat Congregation, so when I ran away, I took the soul storage tank with me." She said very cooperatively, "Now I don't plan to study souls anymore. Let it be in Lord Baron's warehouse." With a smile, List gestured, Continue with your story? Yes. Chris glanced at List, and there was a slight blush on her face. We young magicians studied our topics seriously every day. But there was a magician Flow Truth. He was very active and always kept communicating with every magician. He found that when all of our topics were added up, they could actually be combined into a big topic: how to damage a dragon's soul. This kind of topic was not considered scary. Just like how many knights dreamed of becoming dragon slayers, magicians would often fantasize about how to kill or cripple a dragon. But the young magician Flo had an idea. He began to secretly investigate and immediately discovered a shocking conspiracy. Marquis Bull was plotting to slay a dragon. Of course, not only did he not tell on them, but he also actively cooperated because slaying a dragon was also one of his dreams. But when the research was almost done, the great magicians of the goat congregation suddenly began to capture the scattered magicians, silencing them. Flo told us to run for our lives. My teacher became the one who wanted to kill me. Just when I thought I was going to die, she cast the ice magic, eternal ice, on me and pushed me into the sea. My blessed pendant was given to me by my teacher. It can protect me from harm. Chris touched the silver coin pendant on her neck. Her eyes dimmed. I know. Teacher, Marquis Bull and the great magicians of the goat congregation went to assassinate the Grand Duke's dragon. I don't know if they succeeded. List frowned. Waves surged in his heart. The matter of slaying a dragon had reached his ears, catching him off guard. Chris, I want to know why Marquis Bull wants to slay a dragon. He has the bloodline of the Sapphire family. The original Marquis Bull was the favorite son of the first Grand Duke. As soon as he came of age, he was conferred the title of Earl Bull. After the founding of the nation, he was immediately enfeoffed with the Iron Hoof Island and promoted to Marquis Bull. The current Marquis Bull, Andy Sapphire, was said to have grown up in the palace. He was childhood playmates with the current Grand Duke and served as the Grand Duke's personal bodyguard. They could be said to be very close. The Bull family never changed their surname. They established the Bull Horn Academy to train servants for the palace. It could be said that the Bull family and the Sapphire family were tied together. They were bound together for good or bad. There was no reason for Marquis Bull to slay a dragon and destroy himself. Chris shook her head. It's probably because of longevity. I heard teachers say that the magic goat family has mastered the undead lich transformation technique. The goat congregation relied on this technique to get in touch with Marquis Bull. Lich again. Chapter 354. Chris, I need to go back and think about the news you brought. You have a good rest. There are farmers outside the door to take care of you. If you have any needs, you can tell them. List left the house in a hurry. First, he called his personal guard, Paris, over. Lord Baron, what can I do for you? The hair on Paris' forehead was wet. Obviously, she had been training hard before. She recently planned to learn Qi to see if she could take into account the power of the Black Dragon Gang and improve her strength. I saved a magician. You know that, right? Chris, truth, I have visited her. Her body is as fragile as an ordinary person. To be honest, I am very disappointed. If I also become a magician, I will probably be like her. Of course, it is different. The difference in figure and appearance is huge. List just had a thought in his mind, and then it was blown away like the wind. He was not in the mood to think about some messy things. She brought a piece of news that is hard to tell whether it is true or false. I need time to think about it, so during this period, I hope you can secretly monitor her movements. Hard to tell whether it is true or false. Lord Baron, do you need me to interrogate her? I am still very skilled in interrogation. Paris raised an eyebrow. No, she is going to stay in Flower Town and work for me. Maybe in the future, she will be the magician I worship. I am a little nervous about the news she brought, and I need time to digest it. Paris, when I think about it, I still need you to help me. After all, you are the person I trust. He put his hand on Paris' shoulder and squeezed it hard. Paris suddenly breathed a little faster and maintained a bright smile. Lord Baron, you know I can't refuse. Please, Paris. Liszt retracted his hand and turned away, leaving a straight back for Paris to stare at for a long time. Back in the castle's study, Liszt did not let anyone disturb him, but thought alone. Now in front of him was a dangerous situation. Everything was normal if it didn't happen, but if it did, it would definitely be a big earthquake in the Grand Duchy of Sapphire. It was hard to tell what Chrissy Truth said. When she spoke, her tone was very sincere, and her logic was relatively self-consistent. A lot of the content could even be connected with the information that Liszt had, and there were no obvious loopholes. Moreover, there was no need for her to soak in the sea and be unconscious for more than a week before coming up with such a lie to deceive a country baron. If she's telling the truth, perhaps the assassination of the Sapphire Dragon had already happened. The Magic Goat clan has been extinct for more than 100 years. Why are they still going through so much trouble? The former Marquis Cohen and Curtis Truth wanted to help Annette become the Dragon Domain Lord. Now the Goat Rally tricked the Bull Marquis into becoming a lich to assassinate the Sapphire Dragon. What enmity do these people have with the Sapphire Dragon? For the time being, he believed that what Chris said was true. In that case, there would only be two results. Marquis Bull would succeed in slaying the dragon, and Marquis Bull would fail. Failing to slay the dragon would be a good outcome. The Marquis Bull family would certainly be destroyed, and the Iron Hoof Island would turn into nothingness, engulfed by the anger of the Sapphire Grand Duke. But at least the country would still be stable, and the impact on Coral Island would not be great. Father might even have a chance to advance further because of the reduction of the Marquis title. The large island of the Grand Duchy of Sapphire could only accommodate 7 marquises. If there was one more Marquis, they would have to make up the size of the fief with scattered small islands. This would be very troublesome and unfavorable for the administration. Therefore, the quickest way was to vacate the cage and replace the bird. It was believed that most of the counts would be happy to see the fall of the Marquis Bull family. But Andy Sapphire grew up in the palace. He must have come into contact with the Sapphire Dragon. He is also a close companion of the Grand Duke, and is hardly on guard against him. He has been preparing for so long. Including the previous Marquis Bull, he has been preparing for at least 30 years. Will he fail so easily? More than 30 years ago, the Goat Rally successfully connected with the previous Marquis Bull. For the Marquis Bull to shelter the remnants of the Magic Goat family who participated in the palace coup, it was clear that there must have been a secret deal, the Lich transformation technology. Therefore, it could be concluded that the Bull family had been plotting against the Sapphire Dragon since more than 30 years ago. Liszt's gaze wandered. He did not know what was so incredible about dragons, but from the residual magic power of the Fire Dragon, the smoke mission of the Smoke Dragon, and the spatial gem of the Invisible Dragon, he could barely catch a glimpse of the magic of dragons. The Sapphire Dragon was certainly not something that could be easily hunted by ordinary humans, not to mention the heavy protection of the Sapphire family. However, a Marquis and an organization of wizards, 2 generations, and more than 30 years of preparation, how could it be taken lightly? If Marquis Bull succeeds and the Sapphire Dragon falls, then the Grand Duchy of Sapphire may no longer exist. A country was established by a dragon, and would also be destroyed by a dragon. Without a dragon to suppress the fate of the country, the sacred swordsmen of the Sapphire family would not be able to guard the wealth that they had plundered and hoarded for more than 100 years. If Marquis Bull really succeeds in slaying the dragon, how should Coral Island face such a situation, and how should I face such a situation? There were too many possibilities for the answer to this question. There were opportunities, but there were also dangers. Liszt could not make accurate predictions, which made him feel very bad. He liked to develop step by step and did not like to be interrupted by accident. Now that Flower Town and Black Horse Island were thriving, as long as he was given time to develop, riding a dragon was only a matter of time. I hate this feeling of not having any certainty about the future. Accustomed to the positive choices brought about by the smoke mission, List now felt very flustered. He wanted to find someone to talk to. Marcus? Marcus was just an elite Earth Knight who longed for nobility. He did not have the overall view. Gort? Gort was just a down-and-out Lord Knight. This news would probably scare him to death. Isaiah, Zambrata, Charles, Rick, and others were not suitable to discuss such news. Paris? She had faced a real dragon, but in essence she was just a woman with an average IQ. Achi? The siren was as pure as a white paper. She might not even know what politics was. Butler Carter? It was undeniable that the person he trusted most in Flower Town was the butler Carter. He liked to hide in the study with Carter after a busy day, drink Crescent wine, and discuss the castle, the town, and Black Horse Island. However, territorial matters could be found by Carter, but national affairs were too far away for Carter. After thinking about it, there was no one to talk and discuss. Chapter 355. The dragon-slaying incident was related to the fate of the family, but whether it happened or not, Coral Island was powerless to stop it. Therefore, List could not be too anxious. This was also related to his future. He had to think clearly about how to explain and how to deal with it in order to better discuss with the Count and negotiate a result that was beneficial to him. It was not wise to rashly throw out a question that he could not distinguish whether it was true or false. After drinking a cup of milk tea, he still found it difficult to calm down. The news brought by Crazy was really shocking. At this time, he suddenly remembered that the smoke mission should have been completed, so he called out the smoke mission. Mission completed. Reward, Wizard Crazy Truth. Sure enough, the not-so-beautiful wizard who had just woken up was the reward of the smoke mission. Like the reward of the previous smoke mission, which was the thief Paris, this was a character reward. To be more precise, it was an opportunity for the reward to intersect with the corresponding character, and a favorable intersection. Whether he could grasp the mission reward or not, it was up to List to do it himself. Unfortunately, Paris is beautiful and has a good figure, while Crazy is SOSO. He shook his head, feeling that he should not think about such a problem at this time. The smoke serpentines changed before his eyes. A new mission was quickly issued. The news brought by Crazy Truth has made you feel a deep sense of unease. This is a fear that stems from your weakness. As a great lord, please overcome the uneasiness in the depths of your heart and calm your mind. Reward. A melody from your memory. A great lord is right, but why is the reward a melody? Do you really want to train me into a piano king? List was not very satisfied with the reward. Of course, playing and composing piano music had a very high bonus to his personal charm, attracting the attention of many women. But he was more willing to rely on his own efforts to become a powerful knight, become the focus of attention, and eventually realize his dream of riding a dragon. Piano music was meaningless, but the mission had been issued, and he had no reason to refuse. Mastering 2 more piano pieces would increase his communication skills in the future and sublimate his aristocratic heritage. Back to the mission content. How to overcome your innermost feelings and calm your mind. The best way was to play the piano. He went to the worm room and sat in front of the piano. Previously, the siren Achi listened to him playing the piano or singing accompaniment, but now he could only play for the sprite worms. Wow. There was also the elf Ella. It sat on the piano, yawning in boredom. Music was of no interest to it. In the past, when List was playing the piano, it would jump on the keyboard and dance. It only stopped after a few times of using the finger-flicking spirit art. His fingers gently stroked the piano keys. Taking a deep breath, Liszt played the piano slowly. It was a new song he had learned recently, Euryale by the waterside. When he first heard Miopol play it in the Longtaro castle, he felt that it was very pleasant to listen to. Although he felt that it was slightly lacking in tempo changes, it was still a classic piano piece. Czerny Windmill, the great pianist, and Euryale, the Gorgon, looked at each other and turned into stone. He played slowly, which was different from Miopol's playing style. When he played at home, he would usually improvise, playing however he felt comfortable, without considering too many details. After playing it once, he played Die Elise, and then switched to With You. The sound of the piano made Ella more and more sleepy. She simply fell on top of the piano and fell asleep. The more Liszt played, the more engrossed he became, and his mood became more and more carefree. He found that he really liked the piano. Every time he played, his mood would suddenly become cheerful. It seemed that there was no trouble that a piano piece could not solve. If there was, then he would play too. He didn't know when, but a misty smoke naturally appeared in front of him, forming serpentines. Mission completed. Reward. Canon in D major melody. His fingers had already tapped out a new sequence on the keyboard, and an extremely classic piano piece blossomed along with the keys. It was a rondo. The tune of one tone followed another from beginning to end, with a total of 8 chords running from beginning to end, until the last small knot, when the notes merged together. The song ended. Liszt quickly took out a pen and paper that he had prepared, dipped it in ink, and quickly scribbled down the melody. He played it a few times. While his inspiration was still there, he found the mistakes and dissonances, corrected them, and composed the complete version of Canon in D major. He wrote down the name, Canon in D major, Liszt, and included it in his piano piece. The piano piece soothed his mood, leaving him relaxed and rational. It made it easier for him to think about how to face the upcoming crisis. In fact, from beginning to end, I have neglected one point, that is, the Count and the Grand Duke are not the same. Of course, in the Grand Duchy of Sapphire, the Count has the Coral Island as a fief and has a high position of power. Once the Grand Duke has a problem, the Count will also be implicated. After putting away the piano piece and returning to the study, Liszt continued to ponder. But the first to bear the brunt is the Sapphire family, while the Tulip family, a small boat, is easy to turn around. No matter who annexes the Grand Duchy of Sapphire, the Tulip family can choose their allegiance again. Of course, changing allegiance was not a glorious thing, and the treatment would be correspondingly reduced. However, a wise man submits to circumstances. There was no need to be die-hard loyal to the Sapphire family, which was about to decline. As a sacred swordsman Sky Knight, the Count had a group of elite Earth Knights subordinate. His fighting strength was still quite considerable and hard to ignore. As long as the Tulip family was not pressured by an army, an island in the open sea like the Coral Island did not seem worthy of the continent's aristocrats sending a large number of orders of chivalry. If a dragon was sent, then there was nothing to say. If there was a country that used a dragon to deal with a count, Liszt felt that his family should eat and drink, and then sit and wait for death. Therefore, even if the sky falls, the tall ones of the Sapphire family will support it. I don't need to worry too much. I just need to sit and wait for the situation to change. The Count is roughly the same. At most, he can make preparations in advance. Whether the dragon slaying is successful or not, he can seize the initiative. That night, he slept soundly. Early the next morning, Liszt got up before dawn. He put on leather armor, equipped the red-blood sword, mounted Black Dragon, and led the blizzard beast Dosen, ready to set off for Tulip Castle. He also informed Paris to bring Chris Truth with her to the Tulip Castle. On the way, Black Dragon knew the way to Longtaro Castle without him driving it. Therefore, he studied the new smoke mission on horseback. Chapter 356. The 6 new Earth Knights, after a period of running in, did not show much that List was dissatisfied with. However, List planned to wait for 3 months before considering the matter of following her. Now that the smoke mission was completed in advance, and the reward was a valuable item like Chi Manual, he had no reason not to complete it. When I come back, let these 6 people follow me. The sun had not yet risen in the east, and there was still some residual coolness in the early summer morning. List's thoughts flickered quickly. No one can predict whether the road ahead will be thorny or smooth. Does this mean that the smoke mission can't affect the threads of fate belonging to the Sapphire Dragon? Thinking about it, it's not right. The invisible dragon was affected, so it's impossible to say that the threads of fate of a Sapphire Dragon are thicker than the threads of fate of a Holy Dragon. Maybe it's because of the distance? He suddenly thought, so far, I have done a total of 60 smoke missions and completed 57. Only 3 missions have changed. Old Leathersmith's book collection, Thieves Spying on the Lord, and the establishment of the Fire Dragon Brick Factory. 59 of the missions are about Flower Town and Black Horse Island, and only 1 is about Dunico Hyacinth. In other words, the scope of the smoke mission that affects the threads of fate is within List's territory. The only one not in the territory was Dunico, a woman who had rolled in the sheets with him. It was undeniable that she should have been affected by this unhealthy relationship between a man and a woman. It has been 3 months since List gave up going to Red Crab Island to find her. Without any involvement, the threads of fate should have been broken long ago. So, the invisible dragon stopped near Flower Town, and was affected by the smoke mission or the smoke dragon's power of fate. But the Sapphire Dragon is located in the distant Blue Dragon Island, and the smoke mission can't affect it at all? It was just an inference, and there was no way to draw a real conclusion. After all, List was not even clear whether the smoke he saw was left by the smoke dragon. If it was he some kind of servant or a dragon? Moreover, judging from the dragon's infection with dragon-type beasts, the dragon's bloodline did not possess the magical attributes of a dragon. The beasts infected by the fire dragon, water dragon, and metal dragon were only ordinary dragon-type beasts. Some of them were extraordinary, but that was all. It wouldn't become a fire horse just because it was infected by a fire dragon or a water horse just because it was infected by a water dragon. He wouldn't become a smoke horse just because he was infected by the smoke dragon. Similarly, if List was infected by the smoke dragon, he would at most become a draconian instead of what he was now. As for the servants, the white dragon was killed by the dragon, and its magic and soul combined to become a special way of existence in the state of ghosts. The black dragon was a voluntary sacrifice and was corroded by the magic of the dragon. List himself was definitely not a ghost, and he had never volunteered, so he should not be a servant. Then, did the smoke dragon die and its power ran into my body? The key is, who can kill the smoke dragon that represents fate? According to some night novels and magic books, when the dragon is about to die, it will fly to an unknown location in the Dragon Valley. Therefore, it is unlikely that the smoke dragon died naturally, and then its power is attached to List's body. But it is also hard to say. The fire dragon died on Black Horse Island and has decayed into bones. In short, List thought about these speculations involved in divergent thinking and logical thinking more than once, but after all, there was too little evidence to prove anything. Along the way, he arrived at Tulip Castle at 8 o'clock in the morning. Levis was just about to go out and was surprised to see List coming. "My brother, why are you here today and so early? When did you set off from Flower Town?" "I set off before dawn." "Where is father?" "Father is doing morning exercises in the flower garden behind the mountain." "Why are you here?" "It's a very serious matter, brother. Please find father and bring him back. I will wait for you in the study." List said seriously. "What's the matter? Tell me first." "It's more serious than you can guess." List didn't want to talk about it outside the study. He just urged Levis to hurry and call people. He took Chris into the Count's study first. Steward Lewis was sick, and now Tulip Castle was under the care of Silva, the deputy steward. He personally brought 2 cups of milk tea. Milk tea was the only thing Liszt liked in Tulip Castle. "Please sit down, Chris. Don't be nervous. My father is not a very strict person." Seeing that Chris was a little nervous, Liszt couldn't help but comfort her. Chris nodded and sat down. "Lord Baron, I am just a little worried that this will involve you and the Tulip family behind you. You saved me, I don't want you to be in trouble because of me. Coral Island is remote and the information is not smooth. As long as you don't reveal your identity, no one will recognize you, and no one will associate you with that matter. As for my father and my brother, they will be better able to deal with the danger if they know." "Well, as long as it can help, Lord Baron. Drink some milk tea. It seems that your spirit has not recovered very well." "Thank you." It didn't take long for the Count's voice to come from outside the door. "I would like to know why a son who hunted a 1-ton snake but only gave his father 5 kilograms of snake meat would come looking for his father." Liszt, who was drinking milk tea, couldn't help but cough. It was not that he was stingy, but he really couldn't bear to cough. Before he finished coughing, the Count had already pushed open the door and walked into the study. He glanced at Liszt and Chris next to him. Chris was not wearing a magic cloak and was just dressed like an ordinary person. After the Count looked at her, he went straight behind the desk. "Speak, Liszt, my dear son, what business do you have with me?" Levis closed the door tightly and then asked, "Liszt, are you sure that this young lady whose name I have not yet asked also wants to stay in the study? Her name is Christruth, she is a mage, and the news came from her." Liszt ignored the Count's previous teasing about the 5 kilograms of snake meat and solemnly said, "Brother, please make sure that no one is eavesdropping outside the door or outside the window." "So careful?" Being ordered around by Liszt, Levis was a little unnatural, but he still checked carefully. The Count had already poured himself a glass of red wine and took a sip. "Put away your mysteriousness and get straight to the point. What news did Her Excellency Chris bring?" "Marquis Bull may be preparing to assassinate the Grand Duke's sapphire dragon." "No, he may have already assassinated it. It has been at least a week and a half, maybe even 2, since Chris brought the news. She was chased by a great mage at sea, cast eternal freeze, and sank into the sea, drifting to Coral Island. Chris and the others escaped from Iron Hoof Island by ship, but they didn't know where they sailed to. After being caught up by the great mage, she sank into the sea. Following the ocean current, she drifted to Flower Town's waters. 5 days had passed during this time. It could be roughly judged that Marquis Bull would make his move during this time. Subsequently, Chris was in a coma for 9 days. 9 days was enough for the dragon-slaying battle to come to an end. Chapter 357. Assassinating a dragon was indeed a stupid decision. However, to assassinate a dragon after careful preparation was enough to make one tremble in fear. "Father, brother, I can't guarantee that this information is true. I can only relay the information Chris brought to you for you to analyze. The dragon assassination plan originated about 30 years ago. The remaining members of the Magic Goat family hid in the Goat Gathering, a magician organization. They probably used the Lich transformation technology to contact the previous Marquis Bull. Then, Liszt told him the news that Chris had brought, as well as his own conclusions. After that, Levis still did not believe it. This is ridiculous. Assassinating the Sapphire Grand Duke's dragon is definitely not something a normal person can think of. Dragons are the pinnacle of power in the world. Even if it's a sub-dragon or a dragon beast, it's not something that can be easily killed." His words made some sense. Just like the immeasurable gap between the Sky Knight and the Dragon Knight, there was also an immeasurable gap between World of Warcraft and dragons. The Sky Knight and Great Magicians were very strong. They could hunt down intermediate World of Warcraft and even advanced World of Warcraft. However, there were 3 levels between advanced World of Warcraft and dragons: Super Warcraft, Advanced World of Warcraft, and Super World of Warcraft. It was hard to imagine that someone could cross so many levels to kill a dragon that could control the fate of a country. So, Marquis Bull's dragon assassination plan was like a cold joke. The Count did not laugh. He looked at Chris. "You are a magician of the Goat Gathering. Then, do you know a magician named Weber Truth? He is one of the leading magicians of the Goat Gathering. We call him Teacher Weber. He is responsible for guiding new members." "What about Von Truth, the other leading archmage?" "He and my teacher, Olivia Truth, were in charge of hunting down the young sorcerer who knew the secret." Chris answered with some pain in her voice. The Count nodded and said to List, "Send Miss Chris to rest. We will continue talking when she comes back." "Yes, father." He waited for List to send Chris out. Levis said impatiently, "Father, you don't think List's news is true, do you?" "I don't believe Chris's words from beginning to end." "Don't be impatient, Levis." The Count took a sip of wine and said with a serious face, "I've met Wilbur Truth and Warrant Truth once. They're the 2 great sorcerers worshipped by Marquis Bull. As for the Goat Congregation, I've heard of this organization of sorcerers. It originated from the extinct goat family." "Is that true?" "Maybe Chris just borrowed the name of the Goat Gathering and plotting. Magicians love to do that. What is there in the Coral Island that is worth a wizard's planning? Who would soak themselves in the sea and be unconscious for 9 days just to get close to a baron? Or did you use List to get close to me?" As the Count spoke, his face regained its calm. "There's an 80 to 90% chance that it's true. I know Marquis Bull. He will definitely go crazy for immortality. Father, do you think it's true? Will Marquis Bull really assassinate a Grand Duke's dragon? Is there a problem? It's just assassinating a dragon. If everyone didn't have the courage, how could there be a heroic title like Dragon Slayer in the world? How could a Dragon Slayer and a Grand Duke assassinate be the same? A Dragon Slayer kills an evil dragon, that's why he's a hero. On the other hand, murdering a Grand Duke's dragon is a heinous act. If he succeeds, who cares if he kills a good dragon or an evil one? Levis, I hope you can calm down. As the heir to Coral Island, you're not as steady as your brother List. I just don't quite believe this fact." "It doesn't matter whether you believe it or not. You have to learn to distinguish between priorities," the Count said. List solemnly brought this news. "He can't distinguish whether it's true or not, and neither can I. But this doesn't prevent us from discussing how it will affect the family and Coral Island if it's true." Levis wanted to say something but gave up. "Yes, father. Tell me your opinion. What impact will Marquis Bull's killing of the Sapphire Dragon have?" "It will be a disaster. Without the Sapphire Dragon, our country will not be able to continue to exist. The Sapphire family will be destroyed, and the small families attached to the Sapphire family will also be destroyed." The more Levis thought about it, the more nervous he became. "Father, if it's true, then we must be prepared. You still haven't considered the issue comprehensively enough. There are 3 outcomes for Marquis Bull to assassinate a dragon: failure, success, and compromise. Each outcome will bring about a different situation that needs to be dealt with. How should Coral Island deal with such a situation?" Levis sank into contemplation. He was just an unmarried young man in his 20s. On the other side, List, who had already handed Chrissy over to Paris, quickly returned to the study and found a place to sit down. The Count asked, "Has it been arranged?" "I handed it over to my guard, Paris." "Father, please rest assured, Paris is worthy of my trust, there will be no mistakes." List knew what the Count wanted to ask. The Count seemed to have thought of something and said somewhat strangely, "Although I don't think that inheriting your mother's appearance is an advantage for a male aristocrat, but in many cases, it does have certain advantages. However, young people had better learn to restrain themselves." Liszt did not understand what the Count was talking about and just nodded. The Count changed the subject. "But you can't restrain yourself too much. 5 kilograms of snake meat is too little." "Lord Father, the meat of a mid-level sea monster is just a taste for you, but it is of great help to me. It is related to my future and can reach even greater heights. In fact, I brought a gift for you, my brother, and Lytton. Each of you will get a piece of leather armor made from the 6-headed sea serpent king." Liszt said calmly. He had to admit that 5 kilograms of snake meat was indeed not generous enough, but hunting the 6-headed Hydra king took a lot of effort, and snake meat was an excellent ingredient for taking potions. He really did not want to share it with others. Therefore, he simply used the snakeskin armor as compensation. Hearing that there was a snakeskin armor, and that even Lytton had a share, the Count expressed satisfaction. "Learning to restrain your desires and know how to make choices is a good progress. As a father, I can understand your eagerness to improve your strength. You wasted too much time when you were young. It's good that you can understand. Born in the tulip family, my talent is the worst, which really makes me very distressed. But the glory of the night favors you more." Leavis interjected. Chapter 358. The pressure brought by the dragon assassination was quickly resolved by the witty banter between the father and son. Leavis was no longer nervous, and Liszt appeared more relaxed. The Count was even in the mood to pour a glass of crescent wine for each of his 2 sons. Then, the 3 analyzed the impact of the dragon assassination from a god's perspective. The analysis and reasoning were very simple. Assuming that the dragon assassination was true and had already happened, then there were 3 outcomes. The sapphire dragon was killed by Marquis Bull, the country collapsed, and Coral Island had to find a way out. The rebellion of Marquis Bull was suppressed, the sapphire dragon was safe and sound, and Coral Island only had to wait for the Grand Duke's order. There was also a compromise. The assassination of Marquis Bull failed, but the sapphire dragon was also injured. In this case, the Grand Duchy of Sapphire would not be destroyed so quickly. However, the undercurrents of various forces inside and outside were certain, and Coral Island was among them. What should they do? This was a headache. Now they discussed each situation separately. If the dragon is killed, we have to abandon the Sapphire family without hesitation. Perhaps siding with Marquis Bull is the right choice, if he can become a lich. Leavis expressed his opinion regarding the first situation. As for humans siding with a lich, this was not important. The Count shook his head. "Liszt, what do you think?" "I am not optimistic about Marquis Bull becoming a lich. Longevity without power is just courting death. Those kings and grand dukes would certainly not mind riding a dragon to capture him and treat him as an excellent experimental subject. If he really becomes a lich, he will definitely hide and struggle at death's door. From the moment Marquis Bull staked everything on the assassination of the dragon, he had already been eliminated from the Grand Duchy of Sapphire." Liszt continued. "The Grand Duchy of Sapphire will inevitably fall apart. The question is who will take over this archipelago, the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom, or the Eagle Kingdom, or both sides will have their own misgivings. This place will become a chaotic place. Without the protection of the dragon, the number of pirates will definitely increase wildly. The dragon represented the pinnacle of power and order. Without the dragon, the expansion of people's hearts would probably be far beyond imagination." Leavis asked, "You mean we should choose a country to rely on?" "Yes, I'm inclined to choose the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom. After all, it's our sovereign kingdom. Those marquises will be more welcomed. We're just a count's clan. If we join them, we might even be demoted to a viscount. Even if you want to maintain your status as an earl, you have to pay a lot of wealth. We need to maintain the island, and the kingdom won't go overboard. We might have to pay 10 to 20% of the taxes as protection fees, but it's worth it overall. After all, we've resolved a crisis, and it's our fault for losing the dragon's protection. The Count nodded. Your analysis is reasonable, but you have overlooked one thing. Even if they lose the Sapphire Dragon, the Sapphire family still has a huge amount of wealth. They can use this wealth to trade with any country and obtain asylum. In the future, the Sapphire family might become a marquis family of some country. He looked at his two sons. As for us, we can continue to follow the Archduke. Support in times of difficulty often means loyalty. A loyal noble will be appreciated by the majority of the lords. At that time, it will be time to choose a better target to serve. Levis and Liszt wanted to change sides as soon as possible. The Count wanted to put on a facade first, and then wait for the right price. We need to unite. If the nobles of the Grand Duchy of Sapphire are scattered like sand, they will be easily taken advantage of. Liszt added, Red Crab Island is the best partner, and Golden Island can also be united. We are the nobles of the island. We may be poor, but we are needed to govern the island. This discussion lasted for a whole day. At night, the basic framework was reached. On the surface, they would pretend to know nothing, but in secret, they would be ready to send troops, protect themselves, or flee at any time. The Count sent people to closely inquire about the news. It stood to reason that the news was already on the way, and they would soon know how to deal with it. After going back, break in your night squad as soon as possible. This is a crisis, but also an opportunity. Since you have chosen to fight for glory, the battlefield is the most appropriate way. The Count said earnestly, I ignored you before, but now I hope that we, father and son, can fight side by side. Liszt solemnly saluted. I am always looking forward to it. The Count did not know what to say next. He just patted Liszt on the shoulder. If your mother could see you today, she would be proud of you. Thank you. Go and have a good rest. There is nothing to be nervous about. Aristocrats have their way of survival. There will not be too many twists and turns because of the life and death of a dragon. The strength we have grasped is the foundation of this world. Hold the spear in your hand and be fearless of any difficulties. I will remember your teachings. From Tulip Castle, he returned to the Flower Town. Although Liszt put aside the matter of the dragon slaying for the time being, but he did not relax. Despite his weak strength, he still had to be ready to deal with the crisis. Therefore, he immediately notified the 6 Earth Knights. I hope to complete the night squad's run-in as soon as possible. As for the 6 of you, you can start making your own choices. We are willing to charge for Sir. Without hesitation, the 6 immediately chose to follow. In this way, the Flower Town's night squad was officially determined. Liszt communicated with Marcus alone. Teacher Marcus, carry out the actual combat charge training as soon as possible. Maybe soon, we will go to the battlefield. Will this year's development order be advanced, sir? Maybe. Marcus's eyes lit up. I understand. After completing the Night Follower segment, the smoke mission was also considered complete. When he returned to the study with the latest large number of night novels on the bookshelf, he called out the smoke mission. Mission completed. Reward. Chi Secret Manual Aura Attenuation. Aura Attenuation. Liszt had a doubt. It was probably similar to the effect of restraining one's aura. He felt that this Chi Secret Manual was hidden in the new batch of night novels. However, he was not in a hurry to look for it. He first waited for the new mission to be issued. Mission. The serf Emily, who is training with the girls' group, is always clumsy and cannot learn embroidery lessons. She is often punished by the embroidery teacher. Therefore, she is more willing to take night lessons, which can give her confidence. She cultivates chi faster than the boys. Please arrange her training reasonably. Reward, Dosen's new spell. Dosen's third spell is about to be learned. List received new good news. Dosen would be his biggest helper on the battlefield soon. With a new spell, Dosen's fighting strength would be further enhanced. The only pity was that the 8 little ones were still young and slow at learning magic. They did not look like intermediate World of Warcraft at all. At the same time, Dosen, under the guidance of List, had already learned rockthorns through the explosion of its mouth. It seemed that the 8 little ones only needed to strengthen their guidance. After a flash of thought, he called Thomas, his valet. Go to the administrative office and get a document about a girl named Emily from the girls' training group. In addition, inquire about her life and studies, summarize them in detail, and then report to me. Yes, master. Thomas received the order and left. Chapter 359. 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. When List opened all the night novels on the bookshelf, he found that none of them were like the Vulture Knight Stefenlen's expedition. The golden paper hidden in the cover recorded the Magic Eye secret technique. How could this be? Is the Aura Decay not hidden in the night novel? If not, how did it get into my hands? He thought hard but could not come up with an answer. Suddenly, he had a flash of inspiration. The locals of Flower Town certainly do not know any Chi secret techniques. Even the Tulip family does not have Chi secret technique. The purchased serfs obviously do not know Chi secret technique. They are just a group of commoners. But Chrissy is not a local, she may know. His follower, Charles Trapp, was not a local. But if he really knew Chi secret techniques, then he would not be in such a bad situation. Paris was also not a local. It was just that she had not cultivated Chi before, so she should not have mastered Chi secret technique. Otherwise, with the relationship between List and Paris, she should have given it to him with both hands. Therefore, he went directly to Chrissy's house. Chrissy was arranged to live next to Paris in the aristocratic residential area. How is your rest? List asked gently. It's a lot better. Thank you, Sir Baron, for your concern. Chrissy put on her magic cloak and was reading a magic book. The book was lent to her by List. He had signed a contract with Chrissy, officially employing her as his magic consultant. Originally, List intended to pay her, but Chrissy refused and decided to work for List for free in return for saving her life. Of course, List had to pay for her clothing, food, and transportation. She also had to have the castle support her magic books, experimental materials, and so on. This situation made List very confused. Did he get a free wizard, or did the other party get a free patron? Fortunately, Crazy Truth was quite talented. She became a magician at the age of 17 and had hopes of becoming a great magician in the future. He was proficient in water, fire, and wind magic, and had also dabbled in earth and lightning magic. Because she had been engaged in theoretical research for a long time, she was not very proficient in making magic equipment, but she was very skilled in making magic potions. She relied on making magic potions to maintain her income at the goat gathering. I should have let you rest for a few more days. After all, your body hasn't recovered yet. But you know, the situation I'm facing right now is a little tense. I understand, Lord Baron. Just let me know if you need anything. Flower Town is currently working with 2 mages, Elksun and Glanny. Glanny is responsible for making magic equipment for me and occasionally comes over. Elksun makes potions for me and I am going to hand over his work to you, List said. He has planned to let Elksun concentrate on collecting magic books and obtain magic through various channels, so that he no longer has to stay in Flower Town to make potions. He believed that trading in second-hand books and magic was enough for him to make a fortune. Chris nodded. I'm good at making potions, no problem. By the way, do you know what an auxiliary potion is? List thought of his auxiliary potion, Black Nightshade. The seedlings have not yet grown, so it has not been studied yet. I'm sorry, Lord Baron, I have not heard about this potion. It doesn't matter. It's just that someone told me that my black nightshade has mutated and become an auxiliary potion. It hasn't grown yet. When it matures, I hope you can help me figure out what the role of the auxiliary potion is. Okay. The town currently has black tulip, fast-growing magic thorns, ordinary flame mushroom, and the auxiliary potion black nightshade. In winter, we can also grow snow flame mushroom. There are 5 potions in total. Your job is not easy. Have you considered choosing some children from the town to be your magic apprentices? If I have a need, I will choose magic apprentices. Lord Baron, the inheritance of the truth requires a lot of energy to complete it. I may not be able to do it now. I haven't recovered from the shock of the last magic apprentice's death. She was killed in an explosion during an experiment. It seemed that being a magic apprentice was indeed a high-risk profession. He decided not to beat around the bush. Chris, you work at the goat gathering. Have you ever come into contact with any knight's combat skills? Combat skills. Chris thought carefully, then shook her head. No, I rarely come into contact with a knight. The closest I came was probably being chased by a knight. You really didn't? No. List suppressed his disappointment and continued to smile. Then, you know 6 kinds of water magic. Can you tell me how to cast the Spring of Water spell? I have always been very interested in magic. He was actually not interested. But Achi was very interested. She had learned water arrow volley, water wheel wall, water bullet, and water whirlpool. She had begun to study the water wave shield that only great magicians could master. However, she was not proficient enough in magic arrays and magic runes, so her progress in learning the water wave shield was slow. One more Spring of Water spell could increase Achi's foundation. In fact, List was also going to let Achi write down all the problems she encountered in learning magic and give them to Chris to solve through him. It was equivalent to finding a teacher for Achi. Sir Baron, you don't have to be so polite. You are my savior. If you need anything, just tell me. I will sort out the Spring of Water spell and give it to you. Well, I may also ask you for some knowledge related to water magic later. I am willing to answer your questions. If you have any needs in life, just tell me. I will try my best to meet them. Take Flower Town as your home and start a new life here. Chris's eyes were bright. Yes, Sir Baron. Back in the study, List was still thinking about where he should get the Chi secret skill. It stood to reason that if he did not look for it, the Chi secret skill might soon appear on its own. However, he was used to cooperating with smoke missions and taking the initiative to get his reward. He clearly knew that the Chi secret skill was right beside him, but he could not get it. This feeling was quite uncomfortable. Distressed, he drank a cup of milk tea and calmed his mind. He casually opened a magic book on the table. The title of the book was Cavendish's Air Capture Record. This was the research notes of a great wizard called Cavendish Truth. The book recorded Cavendish's research on air. He believed that the reason why magic had different properties was due to its combination with the substances in the air. The book was valuable not because of the experimental content. In fact, the experimental content was empty and boring, and there were no research results. It was because Cavendish believed that air was only composed of fine dust and free magic. He did not even think of the essential elements of breathing. The real value was that Cavendish had recorded the whole process of preparing the wizard tower, including the materials needed, the price of the materials, the manufacturing of the experimental equipment, the efficiency of potion production, and so on. This gave List a clear reference for the cost of a wizard's experiment, which could reduce the possibility of being cheated by unscrupulous wizards in the future. Of course. Chapter 360. To be honest, List considered where the Chi secret technique might be hidden in the book. the cover and the pages. Although the thick bast paper was thick, it was still difficult to hide another piece of paper that recorded the chi secret technique. Moreover, a book page that hid another piece of paper was obviously different from the other pages and would be easily discovered. There was no point in hiding it like this. Therefore, he could only search in the cover. He cut open the books one by one. When he was halfway through, there was still no chi secret technique. However, he was not discouraged. The castle's magic book collection was only 2/3 full. The remaining 1/3 was in the Seaview Villa and the other in Chrissy's house. As the saying goes, opportunities are for the prepared. When he cut open the cover of a magic book tucked in the corner of the bookshelf, a silver inner page was exposed from the scratch of the cover. Soon, he pulled out the whole page. The silver paper was densely covered with serpentines, and on the back was a diagram of the human body's chi circulation. Do families with chi secret techniques like to preserve their families' chi secret techniques in this way? Liszt stroked the silver paper and judged that it was made of silver. But obviously, it is a level lower than the Vulture Knight Stefanlen's gold paper. He had obtained the chi secret technique, but he did not check it immediately. Instead, he flipped through the magic book. The book was titled Searching for the Pinch Beetle King of World of Warcraft. He vaguely remembered reading it. The content was not attractive, or rather, it was more professional. It recorded the morphological characteristics of several pinch beetles, but in the end, the book did not record any beetle in World of Warcraft. So, this magic book has nothing to do with Vulture Knight Stefanlen's expedition, ? Two different books, one was a knight novel and the other was a magic book, yet they concealed chi secret skills in the same way. Moreover, both ended up in the Flower Town. Liszt could not guess what the driving force behind this was. For example, what caused the chi secret technique to leak, or why the chi secret technique was placed in the book, and then how it ended up on Coral Island after traveling thousands of miles. There was no way to know. He could only treat it as luck. He shifted his gaze to the silver paper. At the top was a line of relatively large serpentines, Aura Attenuation Secret Technique Stephanie Vulture. Liszt stared at the title to make sure he wasn't mistaken. The author of the book was Stephanie Vulture, a Sky Knight who lived in the Blast Castle Kingdom and rode a World of Warcraft Vulture. The secret technique of magic eye came from Stephanie. From the gem space, he took out the golden paper that recorded the magic eye. Comparing the two, the names were exactly the same, and even the craftsmanship of the paper and the serpentine carvings were surprisingly the same. In other words, these two secret techniques originated from Stephanie. He might not have created them, but he must have obtained them. He's definitely not an ordinary Sky Knight. The Count was a Sky Knight, a Sacred Swordsman level Sky Knight, but the Count didn't have a single chi secret technique. The Taro family definitely had a chi secret technique, but as a grandson, Liszt didn't know what it was. Every aristocratic family kept their family's chi secret technique strictly confidential. It was a treasure that could be passed down from generation to generation, just like the elves. It was very valuable. It was basically certain that it was passed down to males and not females. What was the reason that made Stephanie leak the chi secret technique in a covert way? Liszt shook his head and decided not to look into it. He began to study the aura attenuation. The content was very complicated, and the chi operation method was very tricky and strange, but it was slightly less difficult than the magic eye. Its effect was just like its name. It was used to weaken one's own aura. In other words, it would greatly weaken the do chi that one was constantly releasing. It had two uses. One was to act like a pig to eat a tiger, so that others would not be able to accurately judge one's do chi level. The other was to reduce the consumption of do chi. The relationship between a knight's body and chi was like that of a bucket and water. However, it was not a perfect bucket, but a bucket that was constantly leaking. Therefore, a knight had to persist in training and replenish nutrition. Otherwise, the qi refined by the body could not keep up with the qi lost, and the total amount of qi would continue to be lost. It was even more so when taking potions. The magic would constantly collide with the body, breaking the shackles and turning the body into a sieve. Only by constantly replenishing new potions and absorbing more nutrition could one continuously refine qi, maintain the total amount of qi, and continue to practice qi. The value of the aura attenuation lay in its ability to reduce the loss of qi through the coordination of qi operation, which indirectly saved the consumption of resources and improved the foundation of cultivation. In other words, in the past, List ate a large piece of World of Warcraft meat every day to maintain the loss of qi in his body. Now, he only needed to eat a small piece of World of Warcraft meat. In the past, when taking potions, there would always be a large amount of magic dissipating. With the help of the aura attenuation, he could greatly save potions and improve the efficiency. At the end of the introduction, there was a record of the effect of Stephanie's qi secret technique. Aura attenuation can slow down the loss of qi in the body, but the effect will weaken as the qi increases. Elite Earth Knight can slow down the loss of qi by about 3/4. Normal Sky Knight can slow down the loss of qi by 2/3. Sword Saint Sky Knight can slow down the loss of qi by half. Max Sky Knight can slow down the loss of qi by 2/5. Dragon Knight stage unknown. At the same time, because of the slowing down of qi, it will confuse other knights' judgment of their own strength. A Sky Knight can appear as an Earth Knight. Stephanie Vulture. He could be sure that when he wrote this qi secret technique, he was a max Sky Knight. The higher the strength, the less it slows down. At the Elite Earth Knight stage, it can slow down the loss of qi by 3/4. This effect is truly amazing. List was very satisfied with the effect of the aura attenuation. Saving resources was important, but the effect of disguising strength was even better. Pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger was a necessary skill for transmigrators. Without the aura attenuation, he could pretend to be an ordinary Earth Knight in front of the Count, but in front of Marquis Merlin, he would be exposed. Chapter 361. After obtaining the aura attenuation, List immediately decided to practice it. Now that he was proficient in fire surge fluctuations, and fiery dragon drill, multiple arrows, and magic eye had reached the acme of perfection, there was little point in pondering these qi secret books and qi secret skills to improve his strength. It was better to practice aura attenuation to save energy. Meanwhile, Thomas had already returned with the sorted information. Master, this is the administrative office's file on Emily, a serf in the girl group. Emily, from the Eagle Kingdom, had lost both her parents and her brother. She was 11 years old this year, and was the first girl in the girl group to cultivate qi. She cultivated qi faster than most of the young serfs in the passing group. She performed well in the night class, but she still needed to attend the embroidery class. Moreover, her performance in the embroidery class was terrible. She was even terrible at threading a needle. Emily didn't get along well with her host family, mainly because she couldn't do housework and wanted to be a female knight all day long. As a result, she was often scolded. After the night class, she would rather stay in the night square than go home early. Thomas said. After reading the information, List basically understood that this girl named Emily yearned for the life of a knight. Call Rome and bring Emily along. Yes, master. Soon, Rome and Emily rushed over. Rome saluted and stood aside. List's eyes were on Emily. This 11-year-old girl was already about 1.5 meters tall. Although her face was young and her body was thin, her eyes were bright and full of expression. Her eyes were deep, her nose was high, and she had a bit of an exotic style. Compared to the people of the Grand Duchy of Sapphire and the Eagle Kingdom, she had an exotic style. Maybe she would be beautiful when she grew up. However, her skeleton was very big. Her thin body seemed a bit uncoordinated with the big skeleton. It was probably because she didn't have any flesh on her body. Your name is Emily. I heard that you don't like to be an embroidery worker? It was not the first time Emily had met Liszt, but it was the first time she had spoken to him at such a close distance. She felt a little uneasy, but she still plucked up her courage and replied loudly in a childish but firm tone, "Yes, my lord. Emily does not like to be an embroiderer. Emily wishes to become a knight." You have ambition, but do you know that for a woman, the effort required to become a knight is far greater than everyone else? Emily knows, but Emily is not afraid. Liszt couldn't help but smile. Do you know that the resources required to groom a female knight is more than that of a male knight? If I spend a lot of resources to train you into a knight, do you know what you should do? Emily was at a loss. She was only an 11-year-old child. However, she quickly regained her composure. Sir Leader has groomed Emily. Emily is willing to serve Sir Leader for life. Even if I have to give up my life, I will never retreat. Liszt was a little surprised by her precocious answer. As expected of a child who could attract smoke quests and pull the threads of fate. She's quite extraordinary. He nodded approvingly. I'm very satisfied with your answer, Emily. Since you've chosen a difficult path, as a lord, I'll give you a chance to change your fate. I hope that you'll fulfill your promise. Yes, my lord. Emily is willing to follow Sir and charge for Sir. Emily imitated an adult knight with her tender body and performed a follower's salute. She knelt on one knee, placed her right hand on her chest, bent her body forward in a 90-degree bow, and lowered her head to look at the ground. Liszt walked over and helped her up. I accept you as my follower, Emily. When Emily got up and stood up excitedly, he said with a smile, You are my youngest follower and also my first female follower. I wish you to become a glorious knight in the future and pursue glory side by side with me. As for now, you will train together with Maggie. Maggie was the most envious of all serf children because her sister was the Lord's personal guard. She received special night training every day and made rapid progress. Emily nodded excitedly. Yes, my lord. Liszt turned to Rome and said, Rome, personally arrange for Emily's training. In addition, tell her host parents to treat Emily well. In the future, she will no longer have to attend embroidery classes and can concentrate on night training. Yes, my lord. Well, you can go back. Liszt motioned for everyone to leave and said to his valet, Go and call Paris over. She called Paris just to tell her to arrange a partner for her sister, Maggie. It was a waste of resources for Maggie to enjoy night training alone, and training alone was not as good as training with a partner. At least she could have a good reference. Paris replied, I have no opinion. In fact, I am very happy to see that Maggie has a partner. She is getting lazier and lazier during night training. It's just that I am surprised that Lord Baron accepted an 11-year-old girl as a follower. Her longing for the night in her eyes moved me. I believe that people with such eyes will not be ordinary in the future. Perhaps there will be a female sky knight among my followers in the future. Liszt laughed. In fact, he believed in the smoke mission, not Emily herself. Paris smiled. I wish her good luck. How is your chi training going? There is no clue yet. The power of the black dragon can always assimilate the chi that I have managed to extract. Maybe your direction is wrong. The chi originates from the night, but you already have the power of the black dragon in your body, which is a conflict in itself. You can ask Chris for advice and learn magic. It may be more reasonable to use the power of the black dragon to trigger light magic. Invisibility is one of the light magic. Many great magicians will study invisibility, and Paris, after possessing the power of the black dragon, quickly developed invisibility on her own. Well, when my chi training fails, I will turn to magic. After Paris left, List concentrated for a moment and the smoke slowly emerged. Mission completed. Reward Dosen's new magic rock wall. Rock wall. He stood in front of the window and happened to see Trembling Woods playing with the 8 little ones under the setting sun. Suddenly, Trembling Woods opened his mouth and a rock wall rose from the manor planted with apple trees, blocking the path of the 8 little ones. Facing the irregular and twisted rock wall of 3 meters high, 10 meters wide, and 20 centimeters wide. The 8 little ones barked excitedly. Trembling Woods acted as if he had gotten a new toy. He continued to raise rock walls, making the originally beautiful apple orchard into a mess of walls. Chapter 362. Rock wall was not a lethal magic, but it was very useful in team battles. Whether it was blocking or defending, it was a very useful magic. Rock thorns, rock grenades, rock walls. Dosen's training had to be replanned so that it could accept new instructions. However, the top priority was not to train Dosen, but to complete the new smoke mission. Mission: news from afar is coming. No one can predict whether the shocking conspiracy will come true, but as a lord, you need to be ready for battle and wait for the moment when the news is delivered. Reward: green caterpillar reproduction. This was the content of the new mission. The reward was the inexplicable green caterpillar reproduction. He was not very clear about what a green caterpillar was. He asked many people, but they did not know what a green caterpillar was. It sounded like some kind of caterpillar, but caterpillars were basically pests. Why was it a reward? Is it a worm similar to a silkworm? The silk it spits out is green? This question could only be answered after the mission was completed. What he cared about was the content of the mission, getting ready for battle. The smoke mission did not give exact information, that is, whether the dragon slaying will happen or not, and what the result will be is still unknown. But I should determine the battle order of Flower Town to the battlefield, and be ready to fight at any time. List quietly thought about his strength. He and Dosen were a pair. When he went to the battlefield, he would definitely take Dosen with him. Dosen's current strength was comparable to a newly promoted Sky Knight. He had 3 types of magic: the main attack skill Rock Thorns, the control skill Rock Wall, and the long-range output skill Rock Grenade. He had no obvious shortcomings. Coupled with List's magic eyes and archery, it was definitely a super output platform. Paris should be brought to the battlefield. She did not need to fight, but only needed to be able to burst out at a critical moment to deal with a fatal crisis. The rest was the Knight Squad, with 2 elite Earth Knights and 10 ordinary Earth Knight. They were not outstanding, but they should be able to take on the auxiliary work. Basically, this was the full combat power of Flower Town. In terms of equipment, the Knight Squad had a full set of fine steel knight sets, arrows made of Thorn's ironwood and Thorn's poison, which were not too good, but not too bad either. He also had binoculars that allowed him to see ahead of time. My Knight Squad will follow Coral Island's orders of chivalry and undertake some logistical and auxiliary tasks. Once on the battlefield, I will think about what to do. The battlefield is ever-changing, and I can only adapt to the situation. I didn't expect to be on the battlefield so soon. Don't worry, Lord Baron, I will protect you well, Paris said with a smile. List smiled back. With my current strength and Dosen's, as long as we don't run into a sacred swordsman Sky Knight, we won't be in any danger. I will fight alongside my father and brother, and it will be very difficult for me to encounter a Sky Knight. If we really encounter a power we can't resist, then you can take action. He paused and said, use your transformation carefully. You still have a lot of youth to look forward to. If you can save me, then save me. If you can't, then run away first. It was impossible to judge what a person would do in the face of danger. List was just preparing for the worst. As a person living in a peaceful era, he had crossed over to this different world where the night charged. Naturally, he would be nervous about the battlefield. or rather, without experiencing the baptism of blood and fire, he would not be able to transform his mentality and let go of his soul. Marquis Merlin had told him that young people should be hot-blooded. Unfortunately, he was not a young man, and there were few moments where he was hot-blooded. Taking all aspects into consideration was his style. Paris was a human who had faced the light dragon. She said lightly, "As long as my life allows, I will not let Lord Baron fall into danger." There seemed to be an atmosphere brewing. They smiled at each other, and then Paris left the study. Inside the Sea View Villa, the siren magician Chi was still studying magic seriously. She had been completely immersed in the world of magic, and could not extricate herself. Almost most of the time, she stayed in the Sea View Villa, constantly flipping through magic books like a sponge, constantly absorbing all kinds of magic knowledge. "Brother, you are here." "Well, I came to see Chi." Every time he saw Chi, Liszt would be in a good mood. "By the way, I also came to see Nami." The mangrove sprite was sleeping on the table. She rubbed her eyes and saw Liszt. She whispered a chirp as a greeting. Then she continued to sleep. Unlike the restless thorn sprite, Ella, most sprites actually liked to be quiet and spent most of their lives sleeping. After all, they were born from plants, and plants stayed in one place all their lives. "Brother, do you want to hear Chi sing?" Chi put down the magic book and asked with big eyes. Liszt naturally would not refuse. So a beautiful and melodious song sounded softly. It was a popular folk song of the Grand Duchy of Sapphire. When it came out of Chi's mouth, it was no less than the sound of nature. Compared to playing the piano, it could soothe the anxiety in Liszt's heart faster and make him feel better. After the song, Liszt habitually reached out and rubbed Chi's blue hair. Chi smiled and threw herself into Liszt's arms. She liked to snuggle up in Liszt's arms. It felt very warm, even though the weather was getting hotter. "Chi, I may have to go on a long trip. I hope that during my absence, you will continue to study magic hard and strive to become a great wizard as soon as possible." "Where is brother going?" "I don't know. I may go to the battlefield, or I may not have to leave the flower town. In short, you have to study hard." "Well, Chi is studying hard every day. It won't be long before Chi becomes a great wizard of water. At that time, Chi will no longer have to worry about being chased by the Gyurumita in the sea. If there are any more Gyurumita that want to eat Chi will hit them with magic." At the beginning of June, the scorching sun scorched the earth. On this day, the Coral City's harbor welcomed a three-masted sailboat flying the sapphire dragon flag. After docking, the news had already reached Tulip Castle. Count Lee William personally rushed to the harbor to welcome the sailboat representing the court. The sailboat's people had already disembarked and were waiting at the harbor. When they saw Lee William and his entourage appear, a knight dressed in silver-white armor immediately urged his horse forward. "Count Lee William, I am Bosky Pansy, captain of the Blue Blood Orders of Chivalry's 7th Knight Squad. I have come bearing the decree of the Sapphire Grand Duke." "Good day, Captain Bosky. What decree has the Grand Duke brought?" "This is the Grand Duke's personal letter." Bosky took out a letter wrapped in pitch-black leather from his bosom and solemnly handed it over to Lee William. "The decree is in the letter." After receiving the letter, Lee William already had a premonition that something was about to happen, yet he still calmly extended his hand. "Captain Bosky, please follow me to Tulip Castle to rest." Chapter 363. Levis was entertaining Bosky Pansy, a viscount, an elite drug addict Earth Knight from the Pansy family. This family's fief was located in Blue Dragon Island's seven-color city, and it was also a count's family. The family's heirs were flourishing, and most of them served under the Blue Blood Orders of Chivalry. In fact, a family like the Pansy family was called the Blue Blood Alliance, meaning a family alliance vassal to the Blue Blood Orders of Chivalry. They were not a standard aristocratic lord, but rather a pioneering aristocrat. They were the Sapphire family's whip of power. They didn't have a large island as their fief, nor did they engage in production. All of their wealth came from rewards and plunder. The Blue Blood Alliance would usually marry within a small circle, and there was a great estrangement between them and the fief lords. Moreover, the non-lineal female members of the Sapphire family would usually become the mistress of the Blue Blood Alliance, helping the Sapphire family maintain control over the Blue Blood Alliance. For example, Bosky's mother, the wife of the Count of Seven Color City, was a distant niece of the Sapphire Grand Duke. Levis wanted to inquire about some information from Bosky, but he did not receive any positive response. "I'm sorry, Sir Levis. I don't know what happened. I only know that the Grand Duke ordered me to bring a decree, obey Sir Count's command, and carry out the Grand Duke's next order." Of course, the Grand Duke's decree is our Tulip family's program of action. Levis had no choice but to play along. On the other side, in the study, Lee William had already opened the letter with a black cover. The sapphire dragon imprint was intact, indicating that it was indeed the Grand Duke's handwriting and not a fake letter. Coupled with the three-masted fast sailboat and Bosky's identity, it was enough to prove the authenticity of the information. The letter was very short. "My follower, Count Lee William Tulip, the Lord of Coral Island, when you read this letter, your lord, the ruler of the Grand Duchy of Sapphire, Duke Andrew Sapphire, has already overflowed with anger that must be vented through the cruelest war. My closest comrade, a partner worthy of life and death, Iron Hoof Island's Andy Sapphire, has betrayed me. He actually tried to encroach on my most glorious authority, the Sapphire Dragon. This is an unforgivable betrayal. Now, as the Lord, I order you to gather all your might and meet me at Oxhorn City on Iron Hoof Island. The wound of betrayal must be washed with blood and fire. William Lee, it's time to prove your loyalty and courage. Take this black letter and set off immediately. It's an order to encircle Iron Hoof Island. Sapphire 152, May 26th. After reading the letter, there was no expression on William Lee's face as he sat in his chair and remained motionless for a full 3 minutes. Only then did he suddenly get up, put away the black leather letter, and called the deputy butler, Silva, inform Captain Mickey and advisor Jacob to come to my study immediately to discuss matters. Yes, master. Silva quickly left. William Lee tapped his fingers on the table as he continued to ponder. After regaining his composure, he immediately took out a pen and paper and started drafting a letter, writing down a title. Honorable Marquis Merlin Longtaro. Halfway through writing, Captain Mickey arrived. The Count stopped writing and said directly, "Mickey, orders of chivalry should act. Immediately send a knight to inform List, Jonas, Trick and the other lords to go to Tulip Castle to discuss matters. Tell them that this is a meeting of the same nature as the orders of expansion." "Sir, is war coming?" "Yes, it is already here. I will go inform everyone." Captain Mickey went out excitedly. The Count continued to write letters until the Coral City's advisor Jacob arrived. He had just finished writing a letter. After sealing the letter, he gave it to Silva. "Send it to Longtaro Castle through caravan channels." Then he said to Jacob, "Inform the advisors of the major towns that this year's summer harvest will be collected ahead of schedule. We have a war to fight and need a lot of financial support and logistical support. Remember, I need you to ensure that the expedition materials arrive at the port and are loaded within 3 days." Flower Town. List had just woken up from his afternoon nap when the messenger knight from Tulip Castle arrived. "Sir List, Sir Count has summoned all the lords to Tulip Castle to discuss matters." "What matters are they discussing?" "A meeting of the nature of the orders of expansion." "Orders of expansion?" List raised his eyebrows and instantly understood that the news had reached the Coral Island. The dragon slaying incident had occurred. It sounded like the slaying of the dragon had failed, and the Grand Duke had issued the orders of expansion to eliminate the Bull Marquis. I see. I will go to Tulip Castle, please wait a moment. After changing into leather armor and mounting Black Dragon, List hurried to Tulip Castle. Along the way, he took a few deep breaths to calm himself down. The first time in his life on the battlefield was perhaps about to begin. However, he didn't feel the panic and uneasiness he expected. He was just a little excited. After calming himself down, he even had the leisure to call out the smoke mission. Mission completed. Reward: the reproduction of the green caterpillar. The inexplicable green caterpillar had probably been quietly breeding in Flower Town or a corner of Black Horse Island. List had no idea what it was for. But after looking at the new mission reward, the fog on his head did not dissipate. Mission: although it is not an order to go to the mainland to plunder the resources of the Eagle Kingdom, the black letter of the Sapphire Grand Duke has the same nature. Participate in the military meeting held by the Count and fight for the desired position. Reward: the settlement of the Mallard. Participate in the meeting and fight for the position. This task was not difficult. The key was the reward of the settlement of the Mallard. What did this mean? Was the mallard the kind of duck on Earth with a green head? This duck was going to settle in Flower Town or Black Horse Island, and then become a delicacy raised by List? Moreover, was there any connection between it and the green caterpillar? Green caterpillar. Mallard. He always felt that there was a big connection between the two. Just thinking about the reward of the green caterpillar and the mallard, List turned to think about what kind of position he wanted. If I participate in the order, it is very dangerous to go across the sea to fight on another continent. Logistics should be the best position. But this time, I am afraid it is only to encircle Iron Hoof Island. The strength of the enemy is limited. The highest fighting force of Iron Hoof Island, the perfect Sky Knight, and the great magicians proficient in various magic. And there would not be too many of them. The Count told him that among Marquis Bull and his followers, there was only one perfect Sky Knight, Marquis Bull. There were at most 2 sword saints, Amphi Sapphire, the son of Marquis Bull, and Fanshek Topaz, the Count of Yellow Jade Island, and there were at most 3 ordinary Sky Knights. Chris also revealed that there were only 4 great magicians in the Goat Gathering: Weber Truth, Warrant Truth, Olivia Truth, and Witzel Truth. Witzel was the oldest great magician. He lived in seclusion, and his magical strength was unfathomable. If I encounter Andy Sapphire and Witzel Truth, Paris won't be able to stop them even if she transforms. As for the others, with Trembling Woods and Paris holding them back, it shouldn't be difficult for me to escape. But Andy and Witzel probably won't bother me. They're not my opponents. Now, Marquis Bull and the other conspirators were probably too busy. The Grand Duke could not just summon the Coral Island to encircle Iron Hoof Island. So this time, for me, the military exploits are almost free, and I can do nothing? List compared his own strength with the strength of the opponents he might encounter. His confidence soared. Chapter 364. There must be something wrong with the Grand Duke's dragon. This is Father's conjecture. He thinks that with the Grand Duke's temper, if the Sapphire Dragon is safe and sound, he will never issue an encirclement order to deal with Marquis Bull. The big guilds will directly order the Sapphire Dragon to destroy everything on Iron Hoof Island to deter the enemy. After List rushed to Tulip Castle, he met his brother, Levis, who was receiving the nobles who kept coming. Levis took the opportunity to tell him what had happened. The Sapphire Grand Duke had sent a letter, summoning all his followers to gather on Iron Hoof Island to destroy Marquis Bull. Can you infer what exactly happened to the Sapphire Dragon? List asked calmly. At least it's injured. The knight who came to inform was a Viscount of the Blue Blood Alliance. He was very tight-lipped and didn't get any useful information. So, Father is going to follow the original plan, listen to the Grand Duke's order and participate in the encirclement? When the situation is unclear, this is the most suitable choice. Father is already communicating with several marquises and earls. When we reach Oxhorn City, we will carefully consider the next step of action. However, the war has basically been decided. List, you are only 17 years old. Do you really plan to participate in the war? He was a little upset. As the heir of the family who was called a genius since childhood, he only went to the battlefield at the age of 23, and the 17-year-old List was also about to go to the battlefield. List didn't know what Levis was thinking. He just said lightly, "As the second son of a noble, the only chance to change my fate is war. I don't have much time to waste." All right. The meeting was held in the evening. After the Earl of Coral Island, Lee William Tulip, announced the Grand Duke's order, he immediately began to arrange the knight candidates. Everyone will participate in the war. Bring yourselves and your followers. As long as you are not an old, weak, or disabled Earth Knight, you must appear on the battlefield. He looked around at all the nobles. My plan is to form 6 orders of chivalry, 1 elite orders of chivalry, 4 ordinary orders of chivalry, and 5 orders of chivalry to directly participate in the war. There is also 1 orders of chivalry responsible for patrolling, garrisoning, and defending Coral Island. 6 orders of chivalry, 6 commanders. Coral City's advisor, Jacob, became the commander of the orders of chivalry. He stayed behind and was responsible for Coral Island's safety. As for the remaining 5 orders of chivalry, there were already 4 commanders. Lee William naturally led the elite orders of chivalry. The 3 viscounts, Jonas, Trick, and Levis, each led 1 orders of chivalry. Now, there was only 1 orders of chivalry left. Sir Earl, please leave it to me. Without much hesitation, List said directly, "Although it is my first time on the battlefield, I have an intermediate World of Warcraft as my pet. My fighting strength is comparable to an ordinary Sky Knight. I believe I can lead 1 orders of chivalry and fight for glory." Lee William immediately looked at everyone in the meeting. Is there anyone else who wants to recommend themselves for the orders of chivalry? Originally, there were indeed a few elite Earth Knights with the identity of Baron who were eager to try. However, after List recommended himself, they immediately gave up. Not to mention that List was already hailed as a future Viscount, just based on the fact that he was Lee William's son, it would be very difficult to compete with him. After all, no one would be foolish enough to think that in the eyes of the Sir Earl, their position was higher than List's, even if he was Madame Marie's brother. Madame Marie's brother was also an elite Earth Knight who inherited the title of Baron. His prestige on Coral Island was not weak. He very much wanted to fight for the position of Orders of Chivalry's commander, which was the best position to obtain military merits. However, now, he could only glare at List with indignation. He no longer dared to fight for it. List would release a dog to bite him. Every time he went out, he would bring Dosen along, fearing that others wouldn't know that he had an intermediate World of Warcraft. Of course, the benefits of doing so were quite obvious. No one raised any objections in the meeting. Therefore, List smoothly became the new commander of Orders of Chivalry. Soon after, the meeting began to discuss how many Earth Knights each lord could send to participate in the war. Then, they would be assigned to the 5 Orders of Chivalry according to their subjective wishes. Obviously, the Orders of Chivalry led by List were not popular. Not many nobles were willing to join. The response was sparse. He didn't care. He didn't even care about his own knight squad, only Dosen was his greatest reliance. In the end, the Count made a strong arrangement. "Captain Loudon, you are an experienced and prudent elite Earth Knight. You will lead a knight squad and assist List in making decisions. Copperfield and Nash, you will each lead a knight squad and join List's Orders of Chivalry." Captain Loudon had always been the knight captain of Coral Island's elite Orders of Chivalry. This was tantamount to the Count directly adding a knight squad of elite Orders of Chivalry to List's Orders of Chivalry. Copperfield and Nash were veteran baron. They each had their own knight squad, and there was no lack of elite Earth Knights among their followers. In addition, because each Orders of Chivalry had 10 knight squads, there was still an extra knight squad. With a wave of his hand, the Count added List's Orders of Chivalry. As a result, List's Orders of Chivalry had 11 knight squads, a total of 142 people. The Count took a deep look at his son. List, please remember that all the glory of these knights rests on you. List calmly responded, I am with the knights. The Orders of Chivalry were uniformly distinguished by color. The Count led the Red Orders of Chivalry, Levis led the Yellow Orders of Chivalry, Jonas Gravel led the Grey Orders of Chivalry, Trick Sloppy led the Cyan Orders of Chivalry, and List led the Black Orders of Chivalry. Everything was properly discussed. The Count stood up and solemnly announced, My followers, you have 2 days to prepare. At 10 o'clock in the morning on June 7th, all Orders of Chivalry must be assembled at Coral Island's port. May the glory of the knights watch over each and every one of us, and fight side by side on the road to glory. Everyone stood up, including List, who put his right hand on his chest and solemnly saluted. We are willing to charge for Sir. At the end of the meeting, a simple dinner was eaten at Longtaro Castle. He returned to his territory that very night. Regardless of the fact that it was already 1 o'clock in the morning, List quickly summoned all the Earth Knight and town officials and began a meeting overnight. The meeting only lasted for half an hour. Everything that should be prepared had already been prepared, and now it was just a repetition. After finishing these things, he took a bath and lay in bed. The smoke mission was called. Unsurprisingly, as he won the position of Orders of Chivalry, the mission was completed. Mission completed. Reward: the settlement of the mallard duck. I don't know where the cyan caterpillar and mallard duck are. Tomorrow, send someone to look for them in Flower Town. If they can't be found, they should be on Black Horse Island. I don't have time to go to Black Horse Island to look for them. I'll leave it to Gort. Whether it's the cyan caterpillar or the mallard duck, it shouldn't be a great reward. He clenched his fist. War is my top priority now. The smoke changed, forming a new serpentine. Mission: War has come. Serving as the commander of Orders of Chivalry has paved the way for your road to glory. So please lead your Orders of Chivalry to the port of Iron Hoof Island and start your war. Reward: the awakening of Virginia Truth. Virginia Truth. List remembered that he was talking about the magic goat family girl whose appearance was restored by the 36D ghost. Chapter 365. List took out the soul storage jar, tilted the teapot and poured it out. No smoke came out. Obviously, Virginia Truth had not woken up yet. List didn't think much about it and continued to sleep. The next day, all day long, he was busy preparing for the logistics to the battlefield. In addition to the knight squad, List had to bring Paris, Dosen, and 8 retainer knight to serve him on the battlefield. Washing and cooking were inevitable when he went to war. These tasks could not be done by himself and could only be handed over to the retainer knight. In addition, he had to bring several town officials to perform a special task: the migration of serfs. Once Iron Hoof Island was besieged, the castles would certainly fall one by one, and the serfs belonging to those castles would become the spoils of war. List was absolutely reluctant to let these serfs run away and eventually fall into the hands of the Sapphire Grand Duke, who would then be reinfeft to other nobles. He had already discussed with the Count and his brother that he would rent the family's ship and engage in serf transport. As long as there was a chance to coerce the serfs to take a ship to the harbor, he would never be polite. Black Horse Island was a large wasteland, and even Flower Town had a lot of wastelands that were not fully planted. Serfs were really scarce. These serfs were not the same as the serfs of the Eagle Kingdom. They spoke the same language, and could be arranged to work directly after being captured. There was no need for running in and digestion. Remember to bring enough supplies, especially pancakes, breadsticks, and jerky. List checked the supplies on the carriage. When the Lord called on the lesser lords to participate in the battle, he would not prepare supplies for the lesser lords, but only for his own retainer knight. Marcus, Charles, and the others were called followers. In fact, they were just List's retainer knight status before they were in Fef. Sir, we brought 1,500 pancakes, 1,000 breadsticks, and 800 jerky, enough for everyone to eat for a month. Marcus replied. Pancakes were the work of Mrs. Abbey, inspired by List. They were portable and easy to store, suitable for marching and fighting. Pancakes saved more space than the traditional breadsticks carried by the world's armies. Pancakes, breadsticks, and jerky would constitute the staple food in war. Of course, the knight didn't just eat these things. Once they conquered the next castle, they would be able to eat whatever they wanted. These pancakes, breadsticks, and jerky were more of a reserve, just in case. The essence of a knight's combat was to nurture oneself through battle. After carefully checking the materials to make sure that nothing was missing, List organized his gem space again. He took out some things that he didn't need and sealed them in the castle's warehouse, such as mithril, jade, and crystal, and refilled it with food. In addition to the six-headed king sea snake meat from before, this amount of food was enough for him to eat for a year. He definitely wouldn't starve to death. Then he went to the magic workshop in the Shiitake town originally called the Flame Mushroom Processing Workshop. It was where Elk-sun made potions. Now, his job had been replaced by Chris, and the name of the workshop had been changed to Magic Workshop. All the potions produced in the flower town were processed here. Chris, is my potion ready? He asked. Chris moved out the prepared box. Lord Baron, I finally made this batch of potions before you went to war. But I have to say, Mr. Elk-sun, who you worked with before, made potions in a simple and crude way, wasting too much magic power. Is his potion-making skills poor? It can't be said to be too bad, it can only be said to be relatively bad. Maybe he has very little experience in making potions and wastes at least 20% of his magic power. Chris said. She was a relatively talented magician. She was promoted at the age of 17. Elk-sun and others were promoted in their 20s. Moreover, Chris was most proficient in potion making. It was normal for her to improve the effectiveness of potions by 20%. List smiled. Fortunately, you are helping me now. Otherwise, I would not be happy to think that a large number of my potions would be lost in the production process, and that some might be deducted. If I can break through to a great magician one day, the efficiency of making potions will continue to improve. Now I have basically reached the saturation rate that a magician can master. Just do your best. During my absence, if you have any needs, just ask the castle. I understand, Lord Baron. All the potions were put into the gem space. Even if he went out to war, he still didn't want to interrupt his potion practice. The practice of qi was like sailing against the current. Now, with the secret technique Aura Decay, the effect of the potions would be greatly improved. It would not be difficult to break Merlin Longtaro's record of 22 years old Sky Knight. Maybe I can become a Sky Knight at the age of 18 and ride a dragon at the age of 20. List was ambitious. In the evening, he went to the Seascape Villa again to say goodbye to Achi. However, he unexpectedly got news from Achi about the caterpillar and the mallard. Brother, there are a group of ducks and caterpillars in Nami's house. Ducks and caterpillars? What do they look like? The caterpillar is a bit like a baby sprite worm. It is as long as a finger and has fluffy hair. It is not the hair of a worm, but the hair of an animal. The duck has a gray body and a green head. It is as big as a swan and can spit out water arrows. They are low-level World of Warcraft and they like to eat caterpillars the most. Obviously, the reward of the smoke mission fell on Mangrove Island. The caterpillar reproduced on Mangrove Island, which attracted the low-level World of Warcraft mallard ducks that fed on the caterpillar. It was not clear what the use of the caterpillar was. Maybe its green hair could be made into clothing like animal fur, but the World of Warcraft mallard ducks were definitely an excellent source of food. List's eyes lit up. With his current archery, hunting low-level World of Warcraft was a piece of cake. At this time, Achi said, "Brother, those ducks like to lay eggs everywhere. There have been a lot of duck eggs on the island. They never seem to hatch eggs. I haven't seen a single duckling." Duck eggs? World of Warcraft mallard ducks lay eggs on the island. This meant that if picked up, the mallard could be hatched directly and then raised by hand. Just like the low-level World of Warcraft fire rabbits raised in Tulip Castle for food, it could meet the castle's large demand for World of Warcraft meat. Even if they could not hatch, the duck eggs were definitely a delicious dish. He thought for a moment and said, "Achi, can you and Nami collect these duck eggs and put them in the Sea View Villa?" "Forget it, don't collect them. Wait until I come back." It was summer now, and these duck eggs could not be stored for a long time. By the time he returned from Iron Hoof Island, they would have already gone bad. It was better to let the mallard ducks breed on the island on their own. In case these duck eggs did not need to be hatched and the ducklings would automatically break out of their shells, wouldn't that increase the number of mallards? When he left the Sea View Villa, List was in a good mood. Now that there were blizzard beasts, mallards, and black pearl clams that were not sea monsters in his territory, he had mastered 3 specialties related to World of Warcraft. Chapter 366. The time before dawn was the darkest moment of the day. However, the flower town was brightly lit. The torches were lit in clusters, and the crystal lights in the castle made the atmosphere particularly lively. "Thomas, hurry up. The Lord is already washing up. The ironed underclothes need to be delivered to the Lord before 4 o'clock. Have Dosen been fed with food and water? Tom, don't forget the Lord's instructions. Help Dosen take a bath and comb its fur. Mrs. Morrison, have the maids sifted through the dry milk powder? We have to pack it up and load it onto the carriages as soon as possible. Barton, hurry up and feed all the horses for the expedition. Don't delay the team's departure." The butler Carter constantly walked back and forth between the castle and the apple orchard, directing the castle's servants to act in order to serve the troops that were about to set out. When List finished washing up and walked into the dining hall, Marcus, Paris, and the others had already arrived and were waiting for breakfast. After taking the seat of honor, the serving men immediately laid out the napkins. He smiled and greeted everyone. "Good morning, everyone." "Good morning, sir." The breakfast was exceptionally sumptuous. Under the illumination of the crystal lights and candlelight, the dazzling array of dishes was comparable to a festive dinner. There was even a lot of World of Warcraft meat. After cutting a piece of steak and taking a sip of milk tea, List said, "This is our last meal in the castle. Next, I need you to quickly enter a state of war. The distance between the Iron Hoof Island and the Coral Island is a 4-day voyage. The round trip will take 8 days. In addition to the battle on the island, we won't be able to return for at least half a month. Are you ready?" "Sir, we are always looking forward to going to the battlefield. A knight's mission is to live for the battlefield." Marcus had been in a state of excitement these past few days. He had participated in the war. As an elite Earth Knight, he had experience in several pioneering orders, yet he had not made much of a difference. However, he was also a commoner who was very keen on aristocracy. He almost dreamed of going to the battlefield to obtain military exploits and be promoted to an aristocrat. Now, an opportunity had appeared before him. "I'm always looking forward to going on the battlefield again to prove myself." Charles Trapp's eyes were burning. "I'm no longer young. These few years are my last chance." List's classmate, Rick Footprint, said, "Although this is my first time on the battlefield, ever since I was young, My only goal in life has been war. Griffin Haystack grinned. My lord, Griffin has always wanted to go to the battlefield and kill people. David Yellowteeth, who had only recently followed him, had a solemn expression. I really didn't expect to have such a lucky opportunity. The Flower Town is indeed a place blessed by the glory of the night. I will definitely strive for glory for Sir. After Marcus, the other knight also expressed their passion. Only Paris was focused on eating and drinking. She did not say anything. She was not a knight, nor did she have any desire for nobility. Hearing the lofty aspirations of his followers, List's blood began to boil. He hurriedly finished his breakfast, wiped his mouth, and stood up. Whether they had eaten or not, the knight put down the cutlery in their hands and stood up. List looked around. He wanted to say something to boost morale, but after thinking for a while, he felt that it was too cliché. Moreover, in Tulip Castle, he had watched the Count show off his might while he flattered him. He knew very well that this kind of scene had happened too often and had lost its significance. Moreover, there was no need for him to be excited, as the knight was already excited enough. Therefore, he just said in a deep voice, "Go to battle!" Immediately after, he turned around and left the dining hall. He took the red-blood sword handed to him by the serving man and strode out of the castle. Outside, the sky was still dark. Torches were distributed on both sides of Dawson Avenue, illuminating the path. The retainer knight pulled Black Dragon over, and List directly mounted it. The other knight, as well as Paris, also mounted their horses one after another. Together with the two carriages transporting supplies and Dawson following the team, the expedition team was ready. The fief's officials and castle servants stood guard on both sides of Dawson Avenue, saluting with their gazes. Even more fief's residents got up early and stood guard on both sides of the main road, looking at the majestic knight squad clad in fine steel armor with envy and worship in their eyes. No one made any noise, yet the atmosphere was already warm. List didn't say any pleasantries. He lightly kicked Black Dragon's belly and led the team forward slowly. Behind him, Gort shouted, "May the knight be blessed with glory and Sir Lord return in triumph." The others followed suit. "May the knight be blessed with glory and Sir Lord return in triumph." Gradually, they converged into a wave of shouts, each louder than the last. Their shouts resounded throughout the Flower Town. "May the knight be blessed with glory and Sir Lord return in triumph." Amid the loud shouts, the Silver Knight rode faster and faster, disappearing at the end of the dewy road in a short time. Only when the knight was no longer in sight did the shouting crowd disperse under the reprimand of the fief's officials. Those who should go back to sleep went back to sleep, while those who should make preparations went back to work. The lord and the knight went to war, but the officials did not. The serfs still had to work. Soon. The originally lively castle gradually regained its silence, with only a few crystal lamps still vaguely lit, their light piercing the darkness before dawn. The butler Carter stood on the extinguished Dawson Avenue, staring at the dark road for a long time without turning around. Mrs. Morrison came over. "Mr. Carter, breakfast is ready, everyone is waiting for you." "Oh, okay. Are you nervous?" "No, I am looking forward to it." Carter smiled. "Although I am not a knight, but with Master's strength, there is no need for us to worry about him. There is also Dawson, it is full of magic in World of Warcraft. Mrs. Morrison, I have seen too many knights glory in the Flower Town, some people are born aristocrats." Mrs. Mawson nodded. "Yes, Master. You know that I have not worked in the Tulip Castle, and have rarely seen Master until the Count appointed me to be Master's butler. When I tasted my first glass of wine with Master in the study, I understood that Master is a noble-born aristocrat." Carter recalled the time when he first came to the Flower Town. At that time, he had to calculate every day whether there was enough food in the castle to eat. Then List told him that everything would be fine. There was no discouragement, no frustration, no anxiety in that tone. It was calm as if there was nothing to worry about, and this was indeed the case. Since then, the flower town had developed rapidly, and there was no longer any worry about food. On the contrary, Carter was more worried about how to change the taste every day to satisfy Master's appetite. There were too many varieties of the castle's menu, which was a bit confusing. "Let us send our blessings to Master and his followers." Carter sat down and said. Chapter 367. Under the stars and the moon, chasing after the morning dew, the white of the eastern sky gradually turned into a red glow. When the red sun rose from the eastern skyline, the team had already arrived at the Coral City's port. Many knight and knights' retainers had already gathered at the port. "Captain Lawton, I'll leave the black orders of chivalry to you to assemble the team." After seeing Lawton Kettle, List directly pushed the task of assembling the team to him. List went to negotiate with Levis about the ships assigned to him. The Tulip family had about 50 ships, half of which were brig cargo ships, 2/3 of the remaining were ordinary brig ships, and 1/3 were brig fast ship. There were only 2 three-masted ships. One was the Tulip, which was a three-masted ordinary brig, and the other was the Coral, which was a three-masted cargo ship. The three-masted ships certainly couldn't be assigned to List. He was assigned 1 brig fast ship, 2 ordinary brig ships, and 1 brig cargo ship. The cargo ship was used to transport food and water, the ordinary ship was used to carry the retainer knight and horses, and the fast ship was used by the aristocrats. Of course, List had special privileges. His knight squad and retainer knight also sat on the fast ship, serving him. Even Black Dragon was placed on the ship. Paris lived next door, and Dosen guarded the door. Personal security was at the highest level. By the time he and Levis finished discussing which 4 ships belonged to the Black Orders of Chivalry, Count Knight had already rushed over. After giving a speech at the port, he took the lead in boarding the three-masted ship Tulip. Soon after, one ship after another left the port. As the sun rose from the east, the Coral Islands Orders of Chivalry set sail for the Iron Hoof Island. The voyage was boring. However, this time List was a bit busy. Because he had to reorganize the Orders of Chivalry, he was constantly assembling the 142 Black Orders of Chivalry's knight on the ship. There was no way for them to train and charge together, but it was still possible for them to establish simple trust by making certain hand gestures and slogans on the battlefield. At the same time, it was also the time to establish his authority. Other than him as a baron, there were also 2 veteran Baron Copal and Nash on the ship. After a simple sword battle on the deck, both of them had to admit that even without Dosen's intermediate World of Warcraft, they were no match for List. He couldn't even beat List in a 1v2. "Leader, are you sure you didn't become an elite Earth Knight?" Copal asked in dismay after suffering a crushing defeat in a 2-on-1 fight. List smiled faintly, neither denying nor admitting. The combat power of a knight is not entirely dependent on the level of combat aura. All you need to know is that my strength is enough to take on the responsibility of a commander. Charge with me. The glory of the battlefield belongs to our knight's spear. He had already started cultivating the aura attenuation. However, he had not yet succeeded in cultivating it, and the effects had not yet manifested. The chi in his body was still constantly being emitted. Before he had this chi secret skill, he felt that this waste was a matter of course. But now that he had this chi secret skill, he felt very upset when he saw the chi being emitted. This was not a waste of chi, but a waste of his strength, a waste of his gold coins. Copal was convinced. "Of course, I would never doubt it now." Nash also replied, "Sir Leader is powerful, and I am even more confident in seizing glory. I will definitely follow Sir closely." Status and strength were all suppressed. No one dared to disobey List in the Black Orders of Chivalry. Therefore, during the short 4-day voyage, he had successfully grasped the authority of the entire orders of chivalry. There were no more doubts. Without encountering storms or sea monsters, the Coral Islands expedition fleet smoothly arrived at the Oxhorn City's port, which had been replaced with the Sapphire Dragon flag. The Vanguard Knight squad landed at the port. After a simple probe, it was determined that this place was indeed occupied by the Grand Duke's orders of chivalry. Thereupon, the Tulip issued a flag signal, and all the ships began to dock one after another. The 5 orders of chivalry quickly assembled at the port. List wore fine steel armor, a fine steel round shield in his left hand, a fine steel knight spear in his right hand, and the red-blood sword hanging from his waist. The lining of the armor was a snakeskin soft armor made from the 6-headed sea serpent king, which had extreme defensive power. Riding on Black Dragon, man and horse became one. His imposing manner was natural. He urged his horse to circle around the assembled black orders of chivalry. His expression was solemn under his mask, and his sapphire pupils glistened under the illumination of the torches. After confirming that all the night had found their positions, he suddenly put his mask on his helmet and shouted, "Everyone, close your masks and follow me." Crack! 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 Following the crisp sound of metal buckling, the neatly lined up 140 knight quickly closed their masks and shrouded their whole bodies in their armor. Following List, they moved from the port to Oxhorn City. Oxhorn City was a large city of Iron Hoof Island and one of the most famous cities in the entire Grand Duchy of Sapphire. Its fame originated from the Oxhorn Academy at the edge of the city. This academy provided servants to the court all year round. At the same time, many socialites from aristocratic families came here to learn needlework. Because of this, a large number of single aristocrats would stay in Oxhorn City in order to hook up with a socialite from the academy. However, in this formerly bustling Oxhorn City, there were no longer any irrelevant personnel. Only neatly dressed knight could be seen shuttling through the street. The knight stationed in Oxhorn City, after contacting the Count, arranged for the Coral Islands Orders of Chivalry to live on a civilian street in Oxhorn City. Captain List, Sir Count has informed you that after you set up camp, you are to go to Oxhorn Castle with the other captains to participate in the welcoming banquet. A knight came to deliver a message. Got it. He immediately called for Captain Loudon, arranged the accommodations for each knight. Loudon didn't feel disgusted by List's attitude. On the contrary, Loudon enjoyed this temporary authority, berating loudly for arranging the accommodations for the night. List ordered his retainer knight, "My room must be cleaned. Get water to wash the floor, tables and chairs. Scatter more tulip flowers to get rid of this disgusting stench." Accustomed to the fragrant air of the flower town, it was very difficult for him to bear the smell of feces and urine in the stinky city. Next to him, Paris coughed. List said casually, "By the way, also clean guard Paris's room and scatter dried tulips." Paris gave a slight salute. "Many thanks, Sir Baron." There was a smile on her face. "Paris will go with me to the banquet and protect my safety. Xavier is in charge of leading Dosen. Philip is in charge of looking after the horses." List made some simple arrangements. After leaving the Black Orders of Chivalry's garrison area, they headed towards the Yellow Orders of Chivalry's garrison area. It just so happened that Levis had also arranged for his knight to set off with a few retainers. After waiting for the 2 Viscounts Jonas and Trick, the 4 Orders of Chivalry rushed to Oxhorn Castle. Chapter 368. The Sapphire Grand Duke was not in Oxhorn City. In fact, the Grand Duke did not leave Blue Dragon Island. It was his eldest son, Anthony Sapphire, who came to lead the siege of Iron Hoof Island. This 32-year-old heir of the Grand Duchy had reached the level of Sacred Swordsman, Sky Knight, and gradually replaced the Grand Duke in charge of the Blue Blood Orders of Chivalry. If nothing unexpected happened, he would be the 6th Grand Duke. But now it was hard to say. Something unexpected had happened. He was stationed in Oxhorn City, the largest coastal city in the southwest of Iron Hoof Island. The port of Oxhorn City is the last port of call for the expansion order every year. Not only do we have to prevent Marquis Bull from escaping from Oxhorn City, but we also have to prevent the Eagle Kingdom from intervening. Therefore, the first prince needs to personally oversee it. After socializing in Oxhorn Castle, Levis returned to his seat. Iron Hoof Island was known as the barrier of the Grand Duchy of Sapphire. It was the largest island closest to the mainland. It was only a 6-day voyage from Iron Hoof Island to the coastline of the Eagle Kingdom. Iron Hoof Island was the closest port to the mainland. The fleet of the expansion order would replenish their supplies here before heading to the mainland. Because of this island was in theft to a branch of the Sapphire family. It had always been under the control of the Bull family. Unfortunately, it was the most trusted Bull family that had betrayed the Sapphire family. The leader was the closest companion and comrade of the current Grand Duke, Andy Sapphire. List did not walk back and forth. He was not very keen on socializing. Moreover, as a follower of the Earl of Coral Island, he was not suitable to socialize with the nobles of the outer islands. So, who is overseeing Oxhorn City? It's Marquis Grindenton. Levis's expression was not very good. The chief of the Blue Blood Alliance, the deputy commander of the Blue Blood Orders of Chivalry, and the father-in-law of the first princess. Grindenton Red Maple, one of the 7 marquises of the Grand Duchy. His territory was Red Maple City. The Maple family was one of the 2 marquis families in the Blue Blood Alliance. The eldest daughter of the Grand Duke, Princess Annie Sapphire, was married to Glindenton's son, the future Marquis of Maple City. Levis glanced at the arrogant young man who was surrounded by people in the hall. Do you see that? That's Grindenton's son, an ordinary Sky Knight who relied on his family and magic potions. Look at how proud he is, as if he's the next Dragon Knight. His tone was indignant. Clearly, Levis's interaction with the other party wasn't that pleasant. The relationship between the Blue Blood Alliance and the feudal lords had never been friendly. This was because even a marquis in the Blue Blood Alliance would only have one city. Even a viscount would have an island or a city. One was attached to the Sapphire family, equivalent to a servant, relying on plundering and bestowing wealth. The other was following the Sapphire family, equivalent to a minister, equivalent to a small king in his own territory. They just couldn't get along. Fortunately, the aristocratic knight of the Blue Blood Alliance didn't give Levis much face, but the aristocratic knight of the feudal lords frequently greeted Levis. Even List received a lot of greetings. After a moment, List saw the count's figure, slightly behind an old man and a middle-aged aristocrat. He understood that the old aristocrat should be the Marquis of Deep Throat Island Wallace Pineapple Green. The middle-aged aristocrat should be the Marquis of Maple City, Glindenton Maple Leaf. In addition, there were a few other aristocrats walking side by side with the count. They should all be aristocrats with the title of count. This group of aristocrats entered the hall. The knight who had been chatting enthusiastically returned to their seats, instantly quieting down. Glindenton walked to the front of the main seat, dressed in bright silver armor with very deep magic lines, making him look especially serious. Tonight is the welcoming banquet for the Earl of Coral Island, Lee William Tulip. With the arrival of Earl Lee William, the Oxhorn City's fighting order has been assembled. Next is the beginning of the war. He paused. He continued, Tonight's banquet is over. Starting tomorrow, all orders of chivalry will be assigned to their respective offensive directions. Once the troops of the other ports have assembled, they will launch an attack together to sweep the Iron Hoof Island. We must vent the Grand Duke's anger and annihilate the entire Bull family. In addition, Everyone should pay attention to the prohibition of private trafficking of all spoils of war on the Iron Hoof Island. These are the internal resources of the state and must be personally distributed by the Grand Duke. If anyone breaks the rules, then don't blame me for drinking his blood with the sword in my hand. After Glyn Denton finished speaking, he waited for everyone to digest his words before continuing. Then, let the banquet begin. Sitting in his seat, List was very upset. He had made ample preparations to transport a batch of serfs back to the Flower Town. He didn't expect that his plan to plunder serfs would be blocked before the war even started. This made him dissatisfied with the Sapphire Grand Duke. He wanted the horse to run, but he also wanted the horse to not eat grass. In addition, the dishes served were not to his liking, so after the banquet, he was not happy at all. His enthusiasm for the war also quickly cooled down. Now the only reason to support him was to make meritorious deeds, to implement the title of Viscount of Black Horse Island as soon as possible. After the banquet, everyone returned to the station. The Count summoned List and others to a room and held a simple meeting. Glyn Denton is known for its iron blood. You have to restrain your acts of private plunder. There will be spoils of war. When the war is over, you will get your share, so don't slack off. Jonas asked, Count, I still don't know what's going on with the current situation. Not to mention Yuna's, List was also unclear. He only knew that the Grand Duke issued an order to encircle and suppress, so the Knight of Coral Island hurried to Oxhorn City to gather. The Count deliberated for a moment and said, Judging from the information revealed by Glyn Denton, the Sapphire Dragon is injured and temporarily unable to move. The Grand Duke is healing the Sapphire Dragon. After Marquis Bull and his party launched the attack, they escaped from Blue Dragon Island and retreated back to Iron Hoof Island. The situation was a bit puzzling, and the Count could only briefly figure out a clue. So what we have to do now is to listen to the command and sweep Iron Hoof Island. I believe the situation will soon become clear. Although they still couldn't figure it out, everyone calmed down a little. At least they knew that the Sapphire Dragon was not dead, indicating that the Grand Duchy of Sapphire could not be shaken for the time being. They should continue to encircle Iron Hoof Island. There was no need to think too much. However, just as everyone was full of confidence and thinking about how to crush Iron Hoof Island, there was suddenly bad news. The second prince, Angus Sapphire, stationed in another port city, Oxhorn City, was ambushed by Marquis Bull's elite orders of chivalry because he rashly attacked. 300 knights of the Blueblood Orders of Chivalry plus 800 fiefdom knights were completely wiped out. Only Angus, under the desperate protection of his guards, managed to escape back to Oxhorn City. The Orders of Chivalry of Wrath directly under Marquis Bull are attacking Oxhorn City, preparing to break out from there. The Grand Prince has issued an urgent secret order to transfer the garrisons of various cities to support Oxhorn City. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.